Chapter 2569. Hee, that's right. Xiao Hua must have a guilty conscience. Jin Keng said coldly, if he returns to Sky Patrol City and the City Lord finds out that he killed Qin Jian, he will definitely think of his cultivation. How can he escape from the City Lord's search in Sky Patrol City? Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua. Shui Yudao Master gritted his teeth. Thinking of the place where Qin Jian disappeared, it was not far from Imperial Thunder Sect. How could he not know that he was tricked by Xiao Hua? Send out the City Lord's secret order. Shui Yudao Master ordered in a low voice. If any disciple on duty discovers Xiao Hua's whereabouts, immediately inform the City Lord's residence. Yes, disciple understands. Jin Keng hurriedly sent out the order. Fang Lungbi hurriedly said, Xiao Hua is in Imperial Thunder Sect's army right now. City Lord might as well inform Qian Mo. Idiot. Shui Yudao Master scolded. Xiao Hua even killed Qin Jian and Tu Hong without any scruples. How would Qian Mo know his background? No wonder Qian Lei did not come to Sky Patrol City to attend Tu Hong and Dui Qiming's dual cultivation ceremony. He has a guilty conscience. Even Dui Qiming's master and Dui Qiming's master took the opportunity to come to Sky Patrol City and did not disembark from the Thunder ship to greet me. It seems they have a guilty conscience. Yes, disciple is stupid. Fang Lungbi saw Shui Yudao Master scolding him, which was rare, and his body trembled and he lowered his head. Yes, disciple understands. Imperial Thunder Sect must not know about this. Jin Keng sent out the City Lord's order and added, Xiao Hua should only be killed quietly. Otherwise, with his contributions, the City Lord wouldn't be able to easily make a move. Furthermore, at this point, Jin Keng also shrunk his neck and did not dare to speak anymore. Yes, Shui Yudao Master killed Xiao Hua as a nascent soul cultivator. Xiao Hua's strength aside, Xiao Hua was only a foundation establishment disciple. In front of Shui Yudao Master, he was just a child. If Shui Yudao Master directly faced Xiao Hua, then wouldn't that be a joke? But Xiao Hua could even kill Qin Jian and Tu Hong. He and Fang Lungbi might not be his opponent. Shui Yudao Master would not let others do it. However, if Master Shui Yu didn't make a move now, who knew where Xiao Hua would run off to after the battle? Even if he returned to the Imperial Lightning Sect, Shui Yu would not be able to force the Imperial Lightning Sect. After all, everything was just speculation. Sky Patrol City did not have any evidence to prove that Xiao Hua was the one who killed Tu Hong. Moreover, even if Xiao Hua admitted to killing Tu Hong, why would he kill Tu Hong? Quan Jinshan and Dui Qiming were both Xiao Hua's reasons. If this layer of responsibility was revealed, how could sect leader Qian Lei not protect his own Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples? Lung Biao, go to the Imperial Thunder Sect again and see what the relationship between Xiao Hua and Cui Hongshan is. Shui Yu Spiritual Master looked at the ashen-faced Fang Lung and said, the reason why he wanted to assassinate Tu Hong was because of Jin Quan Mountain, but I can't figure out why he would be so anxious. If he were to assassinate Tu Hong while he was out of the city, even with this information, I wouldn't suspect him. Yes, disciple will head over now. Fang Lung hurriedly left. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Fang Lung hurriedly returned with a strange expression on his face. Reporting to City Lord. Fang Lung took a deep breath and said, disciple has asked clearly. Xiao Hua and Cui Hongshan are from the Lightning Palace's myriad Thunder Valley. They are true brothers. No wonder. Shui Yu Spiritual Master and Jin Keng were enlightened. At this moment, a message talisman was sent from outside and landed in Jin Keng's hand. Jin Keng frowned and crushed the message talisman. A disciple's voice was heard, reporting to City Lord Chu Heng, who was patrolling outside Sky Patrol City, saw Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder Sect. Quick, Jin Keng hurriedly waved his hand and a message talisman shot out like lightning. However, Shui Yu Spiritual Master was even faster than the message talisman and rushed out of the main hall. Let's go! When Jin Kang and Fang Lung went out, Shui Yu Spiritual Master was long gone. Only Chu Heng, who had just returned to Sky Patrol City, was left. When and where did you see Xiao Hua? Fang Lung hurriedly asked. Just now. Chu Heng hurriedly said, "Disciple had just finished interrogating Xiao Hua when I received the city lord's order." Disciple did not stop at all and used the teleportation talisman to return here. "Go and receive your reward," Fong Lung ordered. After Chu Heng left, he turned to look at Jin Kang and said thoughtfully, "Once the city lord goes, the truth will definitely come to light." Yes, if the city lord captures Xiao Hua, there's no need to say. Jin King nodded. But if the city lord can't capture Xiao Hua, there's still no need to say. But Fong Lung was still hesitant and said in a low voice, "There's still something I don't understand." Then, how did Xiao Hua use a sword formation? How did he use a flying sword? Isn't he a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Is this important? Jin King did not answer directly. Instead, he looked at the distant sky and said coldly, "Indeed." Fong Lung stopped talking and also looked into the distance. The two of them did not dare to leave and only waited at the entrance of the main hall. After several hours, they saw Shui Yu's spiritual master return. After crossing the entire country of Xi and heading to the west of Meng country, there was a huge mountain range. This mountain range was like a creeping dragon that stretched for thousands of miles. At the same time, this mountain range was also full of ups and downs. The mountains were completely different. Some places were swampy and muddy, some places were bright with the fragrance of plum blossoms, some places were shrouded in black fog, and some places were occupied by immortal clouds. In the middle of the mountain range, although the mountains were dangerous and rugged with strange rocks, the rocks were all sparkling and translucent, and the flowers were all shining. It was really a beautiful scene. This mountain range was the foundation of Meng country's famous Su Yen sect, Zhongxiu Mountain Range. In the mountain range, there was a mountain peak that was not very tall but was rather quiet. White feathers spread out and spiritual apes cried. Hidden by green vines, there was an extraordinary immortal's cave. It was afternoon and the round sun had already moved to the west. The orange-red sunlight passed through the green wood and shone on the door of the immortal's cave. The colorful mottled light slowly slid on the door, and it was beautiful and really attracted people's attention. Unfortunately, although there were no noisy cicadas, the chirping of birds was also not surprising. There was no one who could easily come to this immortal's abode. Whoosh, a scarlet light streaked across the sky and suddenly disturbed this quiet mountain peak. It was a communication talisman that fell in front of the immortal's cave. When the communication talisman touched the door of the immortal's cave, the door raised a circle of light and then disappeared. The communication talisman also fell down and floated in the air. Not long after, the door of the immortal's cave was pushed open with a creak. A drooping boy poked his head out and blinked his sparkling eyes a few times. With a wave of his hand, the communication talisman fell into his hand. Then, the door creaked again and slowly closed, and the boy disappeared. Martial ancestor, martial ancestor. The boy entered the immortal's cave. It was a huge valley, and the spiritual energy in the valley had condensed into mist. It floated in the air and filled the entire valley. There were countless spirit grasses, spirit trees, and even many celestial birds in the mist, making it look even more like an immortal's cave. The boy shouted as he flew. Only occasionally did he have to land on the ground. Along the way, there were many cultivators of different ages that looked at the boy with smiles on their faces. There were even a few that stopped and made way for the boy. "Thank you, senior martial brother. Thank you, martial uncle." The boy's crisp voice echoed along the way. When he saw a stone wall floating in the air, the boy stopped. He bowed toward the stone wall and respectfully said, "Martial ancestor, there is a communication talisman for you outside the immortal's cave." As the boy's voice fell, a layer of milky white mist flashed across the stone wall. When the mist dissipated, a regular cave about 10 feet in size appeared on the stone wall. A voice came from the cave, "Bring it up." "Yes," the boy replied and flew to the top of the stone wall. He saw that this was a cave that was not very deep. There was a faint brilliance in the cave, which just happened to illuminate the entire cave. Inside the cave, there was an incomparable coolness that penetrated to the bones. The boy obediently walked inside and handed the communication talisman to a tall cultivator that was sitting cross-legged inside. This cultivator had an imposing appearance and looked amiable. It was Zhu Qinghe that Xiao Hua met at the burial flower manor. At this moment, Zhu Qinghe still had an amiable expression. He took the communication talisman and said with a smile, "Zhu, your cultivation has improved again. Good, martial ancestor knows. Zhu has been in seclusion for another 20 days. Now I have reached the peak of the 3rd level of the Qi refining realm. With a little more effort, I can enter the 4th level of the Qi refining realm." The boy heard the praise and replied with some exultation. "And not bad." Zhu Qinghe nodded. "You can endure hardships. I was right about you. However, the way of cultivation is to be steady. Don't be arrogant just because you have just reached the 3rd level of the Qi refining realm. The road ahead is long." "Or knows." The boy stuck out his tongue and hurriedly bowed. "No." Zhu Qinghe didn't say much. He waved his hand and let the boy leave. Then, he opened the communication talisman and immersed his divine thought into it. When he finished reading, his face unconsciously showed a strange expression. He whispered, "It's actually the sect leader who summoned the troops. He wants me to go to the Sky Patrol City? Could it be that the first stage of the Dao cultivator battle is going to end so soon? Will the cultivators of my Dao sect win? Or will the swordsmen of Huan country win?" Then, Zhu Qinghe looked at the light outside the cave again and said self-deprecatingly, "The sect leader's order of confinement is also removed from today. It seems that the suspicion on me is now gone. The crime of instigating a Dao cultivator battle will not fall on me." As Zhu Qinghe spoke, a strange smile appeared on his face. He clapped his hands and shouted, "Come, take my order and go to the Jade Rain Palace. Bring me a copy of all the battle reports of the battle." "Yes, I understand." A loud voice sounded from outside the cave. Then, a burly intermediate foundation establishment cultivator flew out of the cave and flew into the distance. In less than 2 hours, the disciple flew back and respectfully handed several jade slips to Zhu Qinghe. Zhu Qinghe narrowed his eyes and picked up a jade slip. He immersed his divine thought into it and seemed to be carefully reading it. However, after a while, Zhu Qinghe's face showed a trace of mockery. "Humph, the golden core cultivators in this battle are all pigs. Peng Dai is even more useless. The entire battle dispatch is a mess." Then, Zhu Qinghe threw the jade slip and sneered, "There's no need to read it in the future. The Dao sect will lose this battle. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators will be forced to the outskirts of the Sky Patrol City by the sword cultivators. No wonder the sect leader ordered the troops. The Shui Yu spiritual master of the Sky Patrol City may not be able to hold on, right?" Zhu Qinghe looked at the few jade slips scattered on the ground and closed his eyes to meditate. However, after a few minutes, Zhu Qinghe waved his hand and another jade slip appeared in his hand. He murmured, "I wonder who the opponent of the sword cultivators is this time?" However, before he could finish speaking, he exclaimed, "Tu Hong? Quan Jinshan killed nearly 30,000 swordsmen? And dozens of illusory sword cultivators? The Sky Patrol City has such a great talent. How can they lose?" Xiaohua? Then, Zhu Qinghe looked as if he had seen a ghost. He was even more shocked than when he saw Tu Hong's battle achievements. He jumped up from the ground and shouted in disbelief, "This guy! Didn't he die in the ink-black forest long ago?" Chapter 2570. That's right. Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder Sect. Zhu Qinghe checked again, and the shock on his face did not disappear. The first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the first meritorious member of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Oh, he was sent to the spiritual stone mine of Mount Quanjin by a swordsman? Seeing this, Zhu Qinghe did not know why, but he let out a long sigh. Phew, this guy. How did he escape? That year, I saw him being struck by the flying sword of immortal Ming Jian with my own eyes. Zhu Qinghe suddenly realized, but I only saw him being struck. Although he was definitely dead, but I didn't see him die. Could it be that he had another adventure? But, fortunately, he died in Mount Quanjin or else. Thinking of this, Zhu Qinghe suddenly looked at the other jade slips that were scattered around, but there was a flash of fear in his eyes. He could not wait any longer, and all the jade slips fell into his hands, and he immediately immersed his divine thought into them. Sure enough, in just a moment, Zhu Qinghe's face turned ashen, and he shouted in disbelief, "Mount Quanjin's spirit howl array." He and the first team of the Imperial Thunder sect actually came back to life. How is this possible? Then he immersed his divine thought into all the jade slips again and looked through them carefully. He did not see any news about Xiaohua, then he carefully kept the jade slips. Zhu Qinghe stood there quietly, and for a good while he suddenly moved, and his figure flew out of the cave. He did not have time to seal the cave, and his figure flew out of the immortal cave like a meteor, and rushed into a place in the Zhongxiu mountain range, and disappeared. North of the Sky Patrol City, in the sky, dark clouds covered the sky tightly. Although the dark clouds were extremely heavy, there was no lightning, nor was there any snow. But, faintly, there was a sound of thunder coming from afar. The sound of thunder was very ear-piercing, as if it was under the dark clouds. When the sound of thunder approached, another figure flashed across the sky. His speed was even faster than a shooting star as he dashed across the sky and scattered the dark clouds. What was left behind this figure were not only scattered clouds, but also the sound of thunder that reverberated between the clouds. This person was naturally Xiaohua. After Xiaohua left the Sky Patrol City, he immediately flew towards the northeast, and when he was out of the sight of the city guards, he immediately urged the thunder travel and flew straight to the north. Although Shui Yudao Master immediately flew out of Sky Patrol City when he received the report from the city guards, his initial direction was wrong. Moreover, his flying speed was not much faster than Xiaohua's. How could he catch up with Xiaohua? He was destined to return empty-handed. However, the pitiful Xiaohua still didn't know that he had been exposed by the Shuiyu sage of the Sky Patrol City. He was still flying around freely. Activating his magic power, Xiaohua pushed Imperial Lightning Travel to its limits. A feeling of freedom filled Xiaohua's body and mind. Every pore on his body was filled with joy. It was as if cruising between heaven and earth, breaking away from all the shackles, was the life he should have. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes, and the primordial spirit in the space was carefully comprehending the primordial spirit sword manipulation technique in Qin Jian's memory. This secret technique was used by sword cultivators to transform into swords, so it was naturally difficult to understand, and there were many secrets that were passed down orally by sword cultivators. Although Xiaohua had obtained it for a long time, his progress was still very slow. However, Xiaohua did not panic at all. If he could comprehend it in a short period of time, he would doubt the authenticity of this secret technique. It was precisely because it was difficult to comprehend that he felt at ease. It was fine if he did not make a breakthrough in this secret technique, but once he did, it would definitely be of great benefit to his cultivation. After being free for more than 10 days, when dawn came, a ray of sunlight shot out from the ground, and in an instant, the whole world was lit up. Xiaohua opened his mouth, and a mouthful of grand essence entered his mouth, but when he closed his mouth and swallowed, his gaze froze. In front of him, a purple color dyed the heaven and earth. That purple color was so pure and so alluring, like a kind of flashing glass, it instantly attracted Xiaohua's gaze, and directly penetrated into his eyes, and then into his mind. Purple jasmine flower, Xiaohua was practically moaning as he swallowed with difficulty. His throat felt like it was dry land. The purple color in front of him flowed like velvet, gorgeous like splashes of color, and also seemed to be purple flames dancing, emitting a flirtatious charm. Throwing away heaven and earth. Seeing the purple jasmine flower, Xiaohua naturally knew that it was the location of the sword tomb, and he did not lose his direction. When the sun that flashed across the dawn rain continent fell to the left of Xiaohua, the purple jasmine flower blotted out the sky and covered the earth. He saw that this was a kind of spiritual grass that was about 3 feet tall, and on the purple background, there were traces of blood-red roots that stubbornly spat out from the dried-up layer of ice. From the root upwards, the dense blood-red threads gradually rubbed into the purple color, until it was purified into a purple branch. On this 2 feet long pure purple branch, there were purple flower petals that were only the size of a grain of rice. These flower petals were hollow, and there was no stamen. All the flower petals seemed to be wrapped together, as if they had never opened before. What was special was that this purple flower petal was unusually sharp at the top and oval at the bottom, like a purple teardrop falling down. If it was just a stalk of purple jasmine flower, he would not feel that it was very beautiful, and it would not even attract people's attention. But hundreds of thousands, millions of purple jasmine flowers suddenly covered the entire snowy plains, covering Xiaohua's field of vision. What was even more unusual was that when the afterglow of the setting west sprinkled on the flower petals, that stunning purple color mixed with mournful blood red, truly filling the entire heaven and earth with sorrow. Xiaohua's heart suddenly gave birth to a burst of sadness. Looking at the rising and falling waves of purple flower petals under the gentle breeze, he secretly said, "For 10,000 years, for 100,000 years, I don't know how many cultivators and swordsmen have been buried here, and I don't know how much blood has been spilled here. Every stalk of purple jasmine flower is most likely the illusion of a living person, and every tiny petal is most likely a drop of their blood. Even though they have fallen, their souls are unyielding. Even though they have fallen, their hearts and eyes are open." But unfortunately, what they saw was not light. They could only see frost, they could only see blood, they could only, year after year, day after day, they could only watch the battle between swordsmen and cultivators. After lamenting for a moment, Xiaohua calmed his heart and secretly said, "The Sword Tomb is one of the 10 most dangerous places in the country of Xi. Before I entered the Imperial Thunder Sect, I had already heard of it. But I didn't expect the scenery here to be so magnificent. However, the magnificence is only on the surface. The endless danger is still on the inside. Just like this battle, even though I am lamenting those who deserve to die, I cannot be lenient in the slightest. Since I am unwilling to become a stalk of purple jasmine flower in this sword tomb, I can only let others do it. Perhaps after a few days, the sword tomb will add another dead soul." Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense, and it gradually extended into the depths of the sword tomb like a tentacle. Precisely, when his Buddhist sense passed through these purple jasmine flowers, the sword tomb gradually gave birth to a kind of sharp feeling, as if it wanted to cut his Buddhist sense apart. That kind of indescribable piercing pain transmitted over, forcing Xiaohua to have no choice but to withdraw his Buddhist sense. Xiaohua took a deep breath of the chilly and icy cold air. He knew that this place was still the edge of the sword tomb, and it was precisely the place where the violet jasmine flowers bloomed. If he went further in, he would surely arrive at the battlefield of sword cultivators and Dao cultivators. Not only were there numerous incomplete formations and sword formations from before, there were even numerous spatial rifts that had been created from the battles. These rifts were probably as numerous as the hairs on an ox, and it would be dangerous for anyone to go in. The snowy highlands have always been filled with water, and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth has always been abundant. But here, faint golden qi seeps out from the air. In the depths of the sword tomb, there are broken flying swords, and those flying swords are mixed with the remnant souls of sword cultivators who died for them. Day and night, these flying swords wailed in grief amidst the broken sword intent, and are also nourished by golden qi. This is the tomb of flying swords. Not to mention the Dao sect cultivators, even the sword cultivators of the Huan country wouldn't dare to rashly enter if they didn't have an extremely clear path. Xiaohua glanced at it, but he didn't have any thoughts of going deeper into the sword tomb. With a wave of his hand, he took out the jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it to take a look. He smiled and said, "This young master wants to make some contributions to the sword tomb, so I'll plant a purple jasmine flower." After he finished speaking, he very carefully identified the direction and flew along the edge of the purple jasmine flower towards a slightly higher mountain. After flying for an hour, night had already arrived. Xiaohua landed on the ground and looked around. Although this place was slightly higher than the other places, the purple jasmine flowers were still everywhere. Coincidentally, There was a small protrusion in the middle of the purple jasmine flowers, which seemed to be a large boulder. Xiao Hua strolled over, and along the way, several purple jasmine flowers brushed past his Taoist robe. This place is great. Xiao Hua floated up and sat on the boulder. He looked around and closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. The night gradually dispersed, and the entire world was shrouded in darkness. The originally purple sword tomb was now emitting bursts of blood red. This blood red replaced the allure of the purple during the day, and everything under the pitch-black night sky was dyed red. Oh, at night, it becomes the color of blood? Xiao Hua extended his hand into the sea of blood, and was rather puzzled. However, as far as his eyes could see, his surroundings were blood red. Moreover, that blood red was speckled, and it was several times weaker than the brilliance of the fireflies. When Xiao Hua's gaze stopped at the purple jasmine flower beside him, he understood. The purple color of the purple jasmine flower during the day was its petals, and these purple petals were wrapped up. Now that it was night, the purple color of the petals could no longer be seen clearly. However, the blood-red color of the petals could still be seen. This blood-red color contained a brilliance, and naturally, during the night, it was the same as the petals. Thus, this part of the world was dyed in the color of blood. Magnificent, sorrowful. Xiao Hua sighed with emotion for a moment, then closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. Another hour later, the night was already as dark as ink. The night wind blew over the sword catacomb, and the purple jasmine flowers swayed along with the night wind. The color of blood was even more like a rippling sea of blood. Xiao Hua's body flickered with a faint, almost invisible protective golden light. He was like a small boat in the sea of blood, drifting indeterminately. Chapter 2571. There seemed to be a breeze around Xiao Hua. This breeze was different from the sound of ordinary wind, and it was also completely different from the night wind. The night wind only blew the purple jasmine flowers and raised the blood waves of the sword mound. It couldn't shake Xiao Hua's protective brilliance, and it couldn't even stir Xiao Hua's tranquil state of mind. However, this breeze quietly arrived and very strangely blew into the light protecting his body. Xiao Hua's heart set off ripples. He suddenly opened his eyes, and a rather desolate feeling came from his skin. This was something Xiao Hua normally couldn't sense. Could it be that there's something else in this sword mound? Xiao Hua's eyes were like stars. He coldly swept his left side, and then closed them again. Open! Xiao Hua gathered his Buddhist consciousness between his eyes. There was a mark of the previous Dharma eye. Generally, soul threads would pass through here. Although the delirium Dharma eye was useful, Xiao Hua basically didn't know how to control it, so he always wanted to use it to control the Dharma eye. But this time, Xiao Hua was disappointed. The Dharma eye mark didn't open because of his mantra. Instead, there was a piercing pain coming from his glabella. Forget it. I'm afraid that this young master's luck has been used up. Xiao Hua shook his head. It seems that this Dharma eye mark isn't easy to control. I'll wait until I have a corresponding secret technique. Thinking, Xiao Hua opened his left hand and waited for the delirium Dharma eye to open. Sure enough, threads of blue brilliance mixed with silver brilliance drifted around him. It was very obvious. Furthermore, there were strands of cotton-like green brilliance floating around his body. Xiao Hua was already familiar with the blue and silver brilliance. It should be the water and metal attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth. But that green brilliance wasn't the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It seemed to be gathering with a purpose. Xiao Hua even looked into the distance and saw that there was actually even more green brilliance gathering around him. Seeing this, Xiao Hua already understood in his heart. No wonder Guyu said that this place wasn't suitable for cultivators to come. Not only is the metal attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth somewhat troublesome, but the swordsman's vengeful soul also has an impact on cultivators' cultivation. If it wasn't this young master's fault, if it was someone else, their cultivation would be disturbed and their cultivation would also be damaged. Finished thinking, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and was about to slap his forehead. Just as he was about to release the Buddha's saraira, his heart moved, and his mind entered the mysterious dark clouds. At this moment, Little White's soul was dancing rhythmically, bringing Xiao Hua's trace of primordial spirit to the top of the sky. "Little White, I'll take you out to eat something," Xiao Hua said in his heart. Then, the soul thread wrapped around Little White. Although Little White heard Xiao Hua's voice, it didn't open its eyes. Even the moment the soul thread touched its body, Little White's soul slightly trembled. However, when the soul thread flickered, the rhythmic soul power sent Little White out of its body. Roar! Little White immediately raised its head and let out a weak dragon roar. Immediately, its entire soul body danced like the sky. This dance was very normal in the sky, but in this night sky, it was completely different. Following the rhythm of the undulations, circles of undulations slowly rippled out with Little White's soul body as the center. An indescribable suction force was born along with the undulations, spreading far away. Obviously, the wandering souls that were attracted by Xiao Hua were immediately frightened when they encountered the undulations. A kind of instinct was born from the wandering souls, just like a drowning person trying their best to escape from the undulations. However, the undulations were like a firm fishing hook. Once it caught a fish or shrimp, no matter how big or small it was, it wouldn't let it go. Those strands of green brilliance of different sizes followed the suction force and entered Little White's soul body. Every time a strand of wandering soul entered, Little White's soul body would emit a faint light. This little white dragon is different from the fire ape's soul. It doesn't need to devour, and can directly use its soul body to devour wandering souls. This seems to be somewhat similar to my immortal body bestowment technique. Seeing that Little White's soul body was becoming brighter and brighter, and was beginning to condense bit by bit, Xiao Hua was relieved. He continued to sit cross-legged and began his own homework, letting Little White Dragon nourish itself here. The night was very long, and the night was also very short. When Xiao Hua opened his eyes again, the horizon was already slightly bright. Little White Dragon seemed to be a little tired as it sat in the air. After a night of nourishment, there weren't any obvious changes, but the condensation of the soul body could be felt even when Xiao Hua released the soul strands. More than 10 days passed in a row. Xiao Hua rarely had a quiet time to cultivate. Other than releasing Little White Dragon's soul body at night, he had been cultivating quietly. From time to time, he would take out the invisible golden sword and use it according to the sword technique in Qin Jian's memory. Although this invisible sword wasn't as marvelous as Qin Jian's, it had the advantage of being invisible. Xiao Hua had the experience of using the execution dream, so using this invisible sword was very easy. Of course, in Xiao Hua's space, there was a jade slip given to him by the arrogant 10th layer Qi refining disciple Yutong when he sneaked out of the Huanhua sect. Xiao Hua also took it out when he was cultivating. Sure enough, the layer of mysterious restriction gradually disappeared not long after the jade slip was taken out. However, when Xiao Hua's divine sense swept through it, he didn't find anything special. There was only a location, a special symbol, and a simple technique. Hee, is this guy sending this young master to his death? Xiao Hua looked at it, then very carelessly threw it into the space. This was because he noticed an extremely special phenomenon. This was the Ganoderma horse. Before Xiao Hua sent the Ganoderma horse into the space, the Ganoderma horse was somewhat injured. However, it still maintained the appearance of a Ganoderma horse. After Xiao Hua sent it into the space, the Ganoderma horse actually reverted back to the appearance of a 10,000-year-old Lingji. It could no longer transform. Could it be that I should first go to the thunder that Dai encountered? Although the Ganoderma horse didn't encounter any heavenly thunder when it reverted back to its original state, Xiao Hua still had some understanding in his heart. Perhaps this young master space, the rules are still a bit strange. Thinking about the growth of the spiritual grass in his space, Xiao Hua could only bitterly smile. He returned his thoughts to cultivation. His current realm was only foundation establishment. The distance from touching the heavenly Tao was really too far. What was the use of thinking too much? Next, Xiao Hua was happy again. He finally found the secret technique to use the execution dream and mountain splitter flying swords at the same time. That mysterious sword cultivation secret technique nearly doubled the speed of the Execution Dream and Mountain Splitter flying swords. It far exceeded Xiao Hua's previous expectations. When Xiao Hua was investigating Zhong Haoren that day, because of the critical moment, Xiao Hua didn't have any other divine ability to use. He could only use the Execution Dream and Mountain Splitter flying swords that he had just comprehended a little. The results were surprisingly good. Not only was the speed astonishing, but the strength also increased. It actually injured Yun Zhaochong's flame dragon body, forcing Yun Zhaochong to not dare to fight and flee in panic. This is just two butterflies fluttering in the air. Xiao Hua looked at the Execution Dream and Mountain Splitter flying swords that were like two cheerful butterflies, attached to each other and pulling each other along. They fluttered among the purple flowers. He couldn't help but think, if the 9 sword pills were repaired, then 9 stars would transit the sun. Then, what kind of momentum would that be? Those are the flying swords of Li Xiubai, the so-called sword immortal. I reckon that even a nascent soul cultivator might not be able to block one of them. Haha, when he thought of being able to kill a nascent soul cultivator in the future, Xiao Hua's mouth couldn't close. Although he really didn't know how long this future was, if there was a path of hope, would he still be afraid of thorns and dangers? Could it be that Marshal Kuen's jade slip is wrong? When Xiao Hua calmed down, he frowned and looked into the distance. Right now, the swordsmen and cultivators must be fighting a bloody battle to the death. Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao aside, what about Fairy Hongxia? If I can stay by her side and block some wind and rain for her, that's also good. As he thought, Xiao Hua's gaze landed on the purple flowers again. Could it be that the feelings of cultivators are like this? Although there is mutual affection, there are also separation and reunion involuntarily. If two people have feelings for each other for a long time, why would they be together every day and night? However, the words were so pleasant to hear. Putting aside the dangers of the Xiaoyu continent, without each other's protection, it was extremely easy to fall. It was inevitable that regret would arise in his heart. Even if there was no danger, a person's heart was fickle. It was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be any changes. Dui Qiming loved Cui Hongshan wholeheartedly, but when others obstructed her, it was inevitable that her heart would be obstructed. If I hadn't killed Tu Hong and pushed both of them into the middle foundation establishment stage, allowing her to see the foundation of my myriad Thunder Valley, I'm afraid that Dui Qiming, who had experienced this unforeseen event, would have some thoughts in her heart. He, of course, these are all my wild guesses. Perhaps Dui Qiming is as loyal as Cui Hongshan, just like Fairy Hongxia in the past. I was only a qi refinement cultivator, but she liked me so much that she didn't hide her preferences in front of everyone in the Feather Immortal Assembly. With such a wife, what else can I ask for in this life? The corners of Xiao Hua's mouth secretly revealed a trace of a smile. And Shui, the most. At this moment, Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and his figure flew up from the big rock. As his figure gradually flew into the sky, his appearance and figure gradually changed, revealing the appearance of a Marshal Kuen. In the northeast direction, 2 faint figures appeared on the horizon. When they got closer, 2 divine senses swept over. As soon as the divine senses swept over Xiao Hua, they immediately locked onto him. After circling around for a while, they withdrew. Xiao Hua quietly stood in midair. He didn't release his divine senses, only releasing his Buddhist sense to scan the area around him for fear that the newcomers would have some hidden tricks. However, when the 2 people flew closer, Xiao Hua could already see clearly that both of them were tall and thin. However, one was an old man with white hair and a beard, and the other was a cultivator dressed in camouflage robes. Xiao Hua frowned slightly, but then his brows relaxed. The old man with white hair and a beard was in the early gold core stage. When Xiao Hua was being chased by Reverend Jingyu, he had used his Buddhist sense to see him. He was the disciple who delivered the flying boat to Reverend Jingyu. Chapter 2572. That's Hu Guanqing. Xiao Hua could see the arrogance on Hu Guanqing's face from afar. He could imagine how Hu Guanqing had treated Zhong Tianyao back in Zhongling Mountain Village. He had forced a golden core cultivator to hand over the materials he used to repair his ancestral artifact. How could an ordinary cultivator be so ruthless? However, although Hu Guanqing's arrogance could not be concealed, he was doing his best to conceal it. There was a trace of respect on his face, and he even flew slightly slower than the Mi Yao cultivator, as if he was letting the latter go first. Strange, where did this Mi Yao cultivator come from? How could he make Hu Guanqing act so modestly? Could he be a nascent soul senior? Xiao Hua muttered to himself as he looked at the Mi Yao cultivator. His heart trembled, but this thought only flashed through his mind. Did a nascent soul senior need to wear a Mi Yao cultivator? However, Xiao Hua suddenly complained in his heart, damn it, Hu Guanqing brought this person here. Even if he's wearing a Mi Yao cultivator, who knows if Marshal Kuan has come in contact with him? It's fine if he doesn't know him, but if he does, how am I supposed to talk to him? Forget it. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through Xiao Hua's eyes. Who cares who he is? Since he's here, he can't blame me for being ruthless. I can't be bothered to say anything to them. I'll just kill them all. Thus, Xiao Hua rushed towards the two. The Dream Executioner and the Mountain Splitter were already in his mouth, ready to kill them in one blow. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to attack, Hu Guanqing suddenly flew a few feet forward and transmitted his voice. Marshal Kuan, don't put on a poker face. This is an important person. Hurry up and welcome him. Don't be rude. When Xiao Hua heard this, he hurriedly put away the two flying swords and replied. The ruthlessness on his face was replaced by a smile, and he stepped forward respectfully. Putting on an act? Xiao Hua liked it the most. Being respectful was his specialty. How could he not join in the fun? Seeing how obedient Marshal Kuan was, Hu Guanju was also slightly stunned. However, he was also very happy. With a smile on his face, he said in a clear voice, Marshal Kuan, why aren't you coming over to greet the Alliance leader's envoy? Alliance Master? Xiao Hua was stunned. For a moment, he didn't even know which Alliance Master or which envoy it was. However, he quickly lowered his head and bowed in midair. Imperial Thunder Sect's Marshal Kuan greets the envoy. All right, forget it. The emissary's face seemed to show a smile like a spring breeze. He sped up and flew in front of Xiao Hua. He very gently helped Xiao Hua up and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Kuan is too polite. I've heard of fellow Taoist's name long ago, but I never had the chance to meet you. Now that I've seen you today, you're indeed a dragon among men. You're exactly the person the Alliance Master values. Who's this? He only said that he was an emissary and didn't even mention his name. He kept calling him Alliance Master. Which Alliance Master is this Alliance Master? Xiao Hua cursed inwardly, but he still humbly smiled apologetically and said, I am just a small gold core cultivator, how could I enter the Alliance Master's eyes? Only a cultivator with an outstanding cultivation like the envoy can be the Alliance Master's right-hand man. Marshal Kuan, oh Marshal Kuan, when I told you about the Alliance Master that day, you didn't believe me. You even laughed and scolded me for being a bluff. Now, you've thrown me aside as soon as you see the envoy. You're actually so intimate with the envoy. This is really beyond my expectations. Hu Guanfu said with a chuckle, as if to express his presence. However, Xiao Hua's heart thumped again. He knew that things weren't good. From Marshal Kuan's jade slip, he saw that Marshal Kuan had handed over the refining method of the Thunderbolt to Hu Guanfu here. He also learned that Hu Guanfu had the materials to repair the Grand Cosmos shifting token. That was why he came here to meet Hu Guanfu. Moreover, he also had the idea of attacking Hu Guanfu as soon as he saw him. He didn't think much about the relationship between the two of them. However, now that he heard Hu Guanfu's words, it seemed the two of them weren't as simple as he thought. There was actually a so-called Alliance Master and envoy involved. What exactly was going on? Fellow Taoist who has always been a man of his word. How can I take your words seriously? If I didn't see the envoy with my own eyes, how could I believe you? Marshal Kuan said with a cold snort. Fellow Taoist Kuan, the envoy clapped his hands and took out a triangular token from his storage bag. He handed it over and said with a smile, This is the Alliance Master's token. You can check it. No need, no need, Xiao Hua said as he stretched out his hand. He was very curious about who the Alliance Master was. However, just as his hand was about to touch the token, the envoy pulled his hand back and didn't allow him to touch it. At this moment, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He pondered whether or not he should snatch the item. However, this thought only flashed through his mind. Alliance leader? The leader of an alliance. He was probably more powerful than any cultivation sect. He couldn't even afford to offend a sect, so how could he dare to offend the leader of an alliance? He just wanted Hu Guanfu's materials to refine the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token. So what if he didn't take Hu Guanfu's life today? This Hu Guanfu is lucky. Xiao Hua thought and smiled awkwardly. He swept out his divine sense and immersed it into the token. Buzz. In Xiao Hua's divine sense, a mountain-like pressure came from the token. A large fall word flashed and appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. Damn it, this is too powerful. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly withdrew his divine sense. His face was a little pale. Seeing Xiao Hua like this, a smile flashed across the envoy's face. He flipped his hand and put the token into his bag. He said, "Fellow Taoist Kuan, you have seen the token. Do you have any other questions?" "Oh no." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, "The Alliance Master's methods are indeed powerful. I can't compare. I've really learned something." Hehe, the envoy nodded with a smile and didn't say anything else. Xiao Hua glanced at Hu Guanfu, who had a complacent expression on his face, and said with a smile, "Lord Envoy, I wonder why you came all the way here? Do you have any orders for me?" Although Xiao Hua didn't seem to care too much about it, he felt as if he wanted to stretch out a small hand in his heart and pull out some secrets about Hu Guanju from this emissary's mouth. Unexpectedly, the envoy still smiled and shook his head. He said, "I don't have anything to do. I just saw that the sword cultivators outside the Sky Patrol City were fighting with our cultivators. I found a job and came to take a look on behalf of the Alliance Master." "What a coincidence. I came to the Sword Tomb because I met you. The fellow Taoist Kuan is good, so I led you here," Hu Guanfu said with a smile. "The key is that I heard fellow Taoist who mentioned fellow Taoist Kuan of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I admire him." The envoy seized the opportunity to flatter Marshal Kuan. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me." Xiao Hua saw that the envoy was tight-lipped and knew that it was unlikely to get anything out of him. He said to Hu Guanfu, "Since fellow Taoist who has come to keep the appointment, have you prepared those things?" "Of course." Hu Guanfu didn't seem to suspect anything. He took out a storage bag from his sleeve and handed it to Xiao Hua. He said with a smile, "The things you want are inside. Take a look." "All right." Xiao Hua took the storage bag and looked inside with his divine consciousness. He saw that there were only sleeve jade slips and a lot of refining materials. There weren't any materials for refining the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token. After he took a look at the jade slips, he realized that the jade slips contained some refining secret techniques. One of the jade slips recorded the method to repair the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token. "Damn it, I see." Xiao Hua cursed. It turned out that Marshal Kuan wanted to use the refining method of the Thunderbolt to exchange for the refining secret techniques and the method to repair the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token. He didn't want to exchange the materials for the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token. "What should I do now?" Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "You have to take a good look at these secret techniques. There are some refining methods for flying Dharma artifacts that Master collected with great difficulty," Hu Guanfu said with a smile. "Did you bring the things that Master wanted?" "Of course." Xiao Hua was also helpless. He stretched out his hand, took out a storage pouch that he had prepared a long time ago, and handed it over. "Very good." A pleased look appeared on Hu Guanqin's face, but he then asked curiously, "Didn't you say that you've gathered some other materials? Why didn't you bring them?" Xiao Hua understood that Hu Guanfu was talking about the materials for repairing the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token. He thought for a while and said awkwardly, "I was going to the Seven Extremes mountain range. However, I remembered my agreement with fellow Hu Guanfu and came here in a hurry. I forgot those things in the Sky Patrol City station." "You? How could you be so careless?" Hu Guanfu frowned. How could you not bring those things with you? Xiao Hua's face turned cold when he saw that Hu Guanfu was blaming him. Forget it. I'll go with you in a while. Hu Guanfu waved his hand. Master is very concerned about these things. You'd better bring them here as soon as possible. Xiao Hua was moved when Hu Guanfu mentioned Taoist Jingru. He was about to speak when Hu Guanfu seemed to have thought of something and transmitted his voice. That's right. About the matter I told you last time, let's stop for the time being. That guy hid his strength too well. I didn't expect his cultivation to be so powerful. I'm sure you've seen it too. He's made many contributions in the Dao Cultivator War. If you act rashly, you'll disrupt Master's plan. I've always wanted to send you a message talisman about this. However, this is a serious matter. It's better to tell you personally. Fellow Hu Guanfu you're talking about? Xiao Hua's heart trembled. He seemed to have sensed something and asked deliberately. Hu Guanfu looked at him strangely. He smiled and transmitted his voice. Of course it's about the foundation establishment disciple of your Imperial Thunder sect, Xiao Hua. So you've already forgotten about him. That's good too. I don't want to alert the enemy. So it's because of this guy. Xiao Hua understood at once. He had thought about it for a long time but still couldn't figure it out. Today, he actually got the answer he never expected. Chapter 2573. Up until his death, Marshal Kuan did not tell Xiao Hua why he was so ruthless toward Xiao Hua. Marshal Kuan did not even mention anything about Kuan Fian. However, from Guanju's mouth, Xiao Hua had already heard it clearly. It was definitely this fellow who had informed Marshal Kuan and wanted Marshal Kuan to kill him or snatch the incomplete Grand Universe shifting token from his hands. Xiao Hua could even feel from Hu Guanju's mouth that it was not necessarily immortal Jing Ru who had instructed Marshal Kuan to kill him, but Hu Guanju, who always liked to take credit from immortal Jing Ru, had asked Marshal Kuan to kill him. Xiao Hua could even vaguely guess that the person who had intercepted and killed the thunder-controlling sect disciples after the Feather Immortal Gathering was probably Hu Guanju. A hint of coldness flashed through the eyes of Xiao Hua, who had always been ruthless to his enemies. He forcefully suppressed his desire to kill Hu Guanni and then pretended as if nothing had happened. He nodded and said, "This Kuan understands." "Yes, Master has already instructed us not to interfere in this matter. He has his own ways." Hu Guanshan didn't notice anything at all and instructed. "I understand." Xiao Hua asked again, "When will your master arrive? Now that we have reached the critical point of the war, I feel that the cultivators of my sect will suffer a great loss. We need the nascent soul masters to come to Sentry City as soon as possible." "But, Hu Guanju raised his eyebrows and a trace of imperceptible surprise flashed across his eyes. He smiled and said, "My master is ready. He will immediately rush to Sentry City as soon as the sect leader gives the order. At that time, fellow Taoist Kuan will have the chance to meet my master and have him guide you on your refining skills." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "This Kuan admires your master's artifact refining skills. If this Kuan can obtain some pointers from him, this Kuan will definitely benefit greatly." Well said, well said. Hu Guanju glanced at the emissary and opened his mouth slightly, as if he was transmitting his voice. The emissary nodded, but his face was covered in fog. "Let's go, fellow Kuan." Hu Guanju waved his hand and said, "The emissary and I will accompany you back to Sentry City. We will wait outside the city. Take out your storage bag." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded. He flew up and said with a smile, "I, Kuan, will lead the way. Fellow Taoist Kuan, please." The emissary smiled and raised his hand. His figure also flew up and landed on Xiao Hua's right. Hu Guanju also flew up and landed on Xiao Hua's left. "Oh, by the way, fellow Taoist Kuan." As Xiao Hua flew for a while, Hu Guanma suddenly remembered something. He patted his storage bag and said, "Before I left, my master asked me to bring you a magic treasure. It's what you wanted when you went there. It's just that my master hasn't been able to successfully refine it until the beginning of this year. I'll give it to fellow Taoist now." "Many thanks to your honorable master." Xiao Hua was happy. He didn't think that he would be able to obtain a transcendent treasure before he left, so how could he not be happy? Still, he said, that old man is really. However, before he could finish speaking, he saw Hu Guanxing take out something from his storage bag. It was not a Dharma treasure, but a spirit talisman with extremely powerful dharmic powers. Xiaohua was very familiar with the magical power fluctuations of this spiritual talisman. Wasn't it the protective spiritual talisman that Li Qingshu had used that day, the hand of nascent soul? This is bad. How did this guy discover this young master's flaw? Seeing this, Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He saw that Hu Guanju had been waiting for this moment. As soon as the hand of nascent soul took out his storage bag, he immediately activated his dharmic powers. A hurricane was born from the spirit talisman, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within 1,000 feet rushed into the spirit talisman. The spirit talisman borrowed the force of the wind and suddenly expanded. In an instant it was several feet in size. Moreover, the hand of nascent soul flashed with brilliance, and a powerful restrictive force appeared spontaneously. Looking at the emissary to Xiaohua's right, he waved his hand, and a ray of golden light flew out from his hand. A small palm-sized pagoda flew into the air. The small pagoda's brilliance was unusually dazzling. When the spiritual chi of heaven and earth surged by the hand of nascent soul swept past the small pagoda, half of it was absorbed by the small pagoda. Strands of jade were born from the edges of the small pagoda, and a suction force that was not inferior to the restrictive force of the hand of nascent soul was born from the bottom of the small pagoda. The force rotated and was about to envelop Xiaohua. Hiss! Xiaohua was shocked and immediately moved. His figure suddenly flashed, and almost an afterimage appeared behind him. His figure was as strange as the wind. Hu Guanxing had deliberately distanced himself from him by several feet, but in the blink of an eye, he was already closing in on him. Woo! Seeing that he was getting closer, Xiaohua raised his hand, took out the wishful staff, and swung it at Hu Guanxing's head. Xiaohua's wind escape was too fast. Although Hu Guanxing made the first move, Xiaohua arrived first. Before Hu Guanxing's hand of nascent soul could move, the wishful staff was already in front of Hu Guanxing's eyes. Hu Guanxing had no choice but to activate the talisman with one hand and slap his forehead with the other. A dazzling sword light flew out and met Xiaohua's wishful staff head-on. With a cracking sound, the flying sword was hit by the wishful staff, and a crack appeared on the flying sword. Hiss! Hu Guanxing's face flushed red. His figure quickly retreated. He wanted to escape from Xiaohua's wishful staff. Attack! Xiaohua shouted. Instead of advancing, he retreated and flew toward the emissary who had taken out his magic treasure. What is he doing? Hu Guanxing was slightly taken aback, but his heart still relaxed. He hurriedly activated the hand of nascent soul. However, just as Xiaohua turned to attack the emissary, two green and red flying swords flew out of Xiaohua's mouth. One in front and one behind, they chased each other and pierced toward Hu Guanxing with incomparable speed. Flying swords? Hu Guanxing didn't have time to retrieve his flying swords. When he saw Xiaohua attack with flying swords, he couldn't help but be taken aback. But when he saw the two flying swords piercing toward him at an unimaginable speed, Hu Guanxing was scared out of his wits. Dodge! Hu Guanxing only had this thought in his mind. He didn't even have time to activate the talisman. However, the distance between him and Xiaohua was too close, and the flying speed of the Dream Executioner and the Mountain Splitter was too fast. In addition, the strength of the two flying swords was too great. Just as the thought of dodging arose in Hu Guanxing's mind, the two swords had already pierced his body. With a pu, the Dream Executioner was the first to strike. Hu Guanxing's protective golden light flashed and was pierced through by the Dream Executioner. Woo! With a flash of brilliance, the Dream Executioner was blocked by Hu Guanxing's protective magic treasure. Although the huge impact made Hu Guanxing feel incomparable pain, the Dream Executioner was blocked in the end. Hiss! Immediately after, the second sword light arrived. The power of the Mountain Splitter increased by a lot under the Dream Executioner's cooperation. The flashing protective magic treasure only resisted for a few breaths of time before the light was extinguished and the mountain splitter pierced through. Pooh! With a muffled sound, the mountain splitter pierced through Hu Guanqing's chest and came out from his back. Hu Guanqing, an early golden core cultivator, was so easily killed by Xiao Hua. The swollen nascent soul hand fell along with Hu Guanqing's corpse. Like a deflated bubble, it rapidly shrank and finally turned into a talisman that fell beside the corpse. Xiao Hua turned around and attacked the envoy. He didn't even check on Hu Guanqing. Since he attacked, he absolutely couldn't let the envoy escape, even if he was the martial Kuan. Who would have thought that the thing that made Xiao Hua's soul fly out of his body would happen? Seeing Xiao Hua raise the wishful staff, the enchanting envoy's eyes suddenly widened. A brilliant brilliance flashed through his eyes. Then he cried out in extreme shock. "You? Who are you? You actually know the transfiguration technique?" As he spoke, the shocked envoy waved his hand. The small pagoda quickly fell, and his figure strangely floated up. Xiao Hua's speed was extremely fast, but the envoy's small pagoda had already been raised and blocked in front of the wishful staff. The suction force of the small pagoda was amazing. Xiao Hua's body shook continuously, and the brilliance of his protective body flashed. But when the wishful staff hit the suction force, the small pagoda flew out. At this time, the envoy's figure was like smoke and also like a ghost. He only flashed a few times in the air and chased after the small pagoda. He grabbed the small pagoda in his hand, and then without looking back, a trace of green smoke appeared around his body, and his whole figure disappeared. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiao Hua turned pale with fright. This was the first time he had seen such a strange flying technique. Moreover, this emissary had actually seen through his disguise technique with a single sentence. How could this not surprise him? How could he let the envoy escape? Xiao Hua yelled, his figure flashed, and a stick hit the place where the emissary disappeared. Unfortunately, the stick hit empty air, and not even a hair of the envoy was hit. Xiao Hua was anxious. His figure also flashed and disappeared, as if he was chasing after the envoy. However, in a moment, Xiao Hua's figure appeared one zhang away, and his face was full of confusion and anxiety. Who is this envoy? He actually has such a powerful flying technique. Xiao Hua was really anxious. If I had known this earlier, I would have killed this person first. Or at least not reveal any trace of the wishful staff. However, now that things had come to this, where was there a special medicine for regret? Even if Xiao Hua opened his illusion breaker eyes and looked around, he still could not find the whereabouts of the envoy. Xiao Hua snorted coldly, and his heart was still unwilling. He felt that his illusion breaker eyes should be able to see where the envoy fled, but he did not know how to check. Even if you know that I am pretending to be Marshal Kuan, so what? You don't know who I am. Xiao Hua said coldly. This envoy did not go to the Dao Sword battlefield to help, but ran here. There must be something shameful. This so-called alliance leader was probably something that couldn't be seen in public. I am not even afraid of a nascent soul cultivator, so why would I be afraid of some bullshit alliance leader? Thinking, Xiao Hua flew back to the place where he had killed Hu Guanmu. With a wave of his hand, the intact nascent soul hand talisman fell into his hand. Xiao Hua looked at it and carefully stored it in his space. Chapter 2574. After that, Xiao Hua picked up Hu Guanda's storage bag and checked it. Sure enough, not only were there materials to repair the Grand Cosmos shifting token, there were also materials to refine the Thunderbolt, and many other precious materials for refining tools. I didn't come here in vain. Xiao Hua snorted coldly and pointed his finger. A wisp of true samadhi fire fell on the corpse, burning it until only a golden core was left. Looking at the golden core that was only the size of a grain of rice, Xiao Hua sneered. You're just an early-stage golden core cultivator, yet you dared to scheme against a middle-stage golden core cultivator. You're really tired of living. However, how did this guy discover my flaw? This was something that Xiao Hua couldn't figure out. Xiao Hua originally wanted to call Goldie out of the space, but he looked around vigilantly and was still not at ease. With a wave of his hand, he sent the golden core into the space. What made Xiaohua flabbergasted was that Goldie, who had always liked golden cores, sniffed this little golden core and didn't pay attention to it at all. It turned its head to the side. Oh my god, it doesn't even care about golden cores. Xiaohua smacked his lips and thought. However, the quality of this Huguanda's golden core is indeed not good. No wonder Goldie doesn't like it. Don't waste it, Xiaohua thought as he sent the golden core to the duck floating on the water. The duck opened its tender yellow beak and swallowed the golden core into its stomach without even opening its eyes. After Xiaohua looked around and found no flaws, he turned around and wanted to fly away. However, just as he turned around, his gaze fell on a stone that was piled up in the shape of the word, Kun, 100 feet away. Xiaohua's eyes lit up as he suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out a jade slip from the space. He immersed his divine sense in it and looked at it for a moment. Then he flew to the stone and grabbed it. A layer of silver light appeared on the stone, and a palm-sized square cauldron appeared. Strange. Xiaohua pinched his chin and said curiously, "There are strange things every year, but there are especially many this year. This thing, why is it still here? It seems dozens of years have passed, right?" After looking at the small cauldron overflowing with silver light for a moment, Xiaohua tried to throw the jade slip into it. Buzz. The small cauldron began to emit a brilliance, and a wave of faint smoke emerged from the jade slip. Soon after, the jade slip flew out of the small cauldron, and the small cauldron once again turned into a silver light that landed on the stone and slowly disappeared. Looking at the jade slip that was emitting smoke, Xiaohua immersed his divine sense into it. A moment later, Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. He looked inside the sword tomb and muttered to himself, "What is this jade system trying to sell?" Young Master remembered that he had evil intentions towards Young Master that day. Why did he come to the sword tomb? Since I'm here, I'll go take a look. What kind of waves can a foundation establishment brat cause? Besides, my whereabouts have already been exposed by that bullshit emissary. If I don't go out and hide, should I go back to Sky Patrol City and walk right into their trap? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's figure moved like lightning and flew in the direction indicated by the jade slip. After Xiaohua's figure disappeared for an hour, a wave of fluctuation flashed in midair, and Xiaohua's figure appeared there again. His divine sense once again swept across the area within 100 miles. Damn it, could it be that the emissary really left? Xiaohua actually made a feint and returned here again to see if the emissary was hiding somewhere and not escaping at that time. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, Xiaohua was helpless and could only resentfully fly up again. After more than half a day, a faint figure appeared beside a low-lying mountain rock a few miles away from here. It was the emissary who had disappeared. However, at this time, a trace of horror appeared on the emissary's pale face. I really didn't expect this. This guy actually knows the transfiguration technique. Moreover, the thing in his hand seems to be a demonic artifact. This demonic artifact is different from ordinary demonic artifacts. It can actually send the demons subduing pagoda flying. This guy, who is he? However, since he can kill Marshal Cohen, he must have some grudges with the thunder-controlling sect. He might even have a grudge with a Dao sect cultivator. The emissary's eyes turned. Yes, he used a sword cultivator's secret technique to kill Huguan Mu. But his flying sword seems to be different from a sword cultivator's. Maybe he's a bird cultivator? Or a beast cultivator? It seems that only Huan country swordsmen are active in the vicinity of the sword catacomb. This guy is undoubtedly a swordsman. The emissary was still in a state of shock. Seeing that there was no more movement nearby, he quietly flew up, still thinking to himself. But as he flew, his body suddenly shook again, as if he had thought of something. That's not right. If this guy is a swordsman, why is he waiting here alone for Huguan Mu? Besides, why does he need so many of Huguan Mu's refining materials? The most inconceivable thing is that when I saw this guy, I already used my divine sense to investigate him. He is undoubtedly a Dao sect cultivator. When did the transfiguration technique reach such a miraculous level? Who on earth is this guy? The emissary was really scratching his head. This won't do. Such a strange cultivator, no matter if he's a cultivator or a sword cultivator, will be detrimental to my heavenly devil sect and my sect master. I must report this to Lord Sect Master. As he spoke, the emissary got rid of the Mimi. It was a young cultivator dressed in an ordinary Taoist robe, with delicate features and an extremely refined expression on his face. He looked like he was in his 20s. Who was this emissary? Wasn't he the deputy sect master Zhang Jihao that heavenly devil sect's Zhang Qingshao had personally appointed? After Zhang Jihao thought about it, his figure immediately turned into green smoke and disappeared. After waiting for an hour, he flew out from a stone crack in a snowy plain. His originally pale face was even more bloodless. Then, Zhang Jihao looked at the sky and said in a low voice, Xiong Huasong sent a message, saying that he found clues to the Grand Universe Shifting Token. Damn it, isn't it that Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder Sect? Wouldn't it be fine if he directly killed him and took the token? Why did he have to make this trip? This Xiao Hua is also the reincarnation of a praying mantis. He should have died in the netherworld. Why is he still alive now? If that Zhu Qinghe knew, wouldn't he desperately cover it up? Haha, things are getting more and more interesting. Yes, it was indeed interesting. Not only did Zhang Jihao have such thoughts, but Zhang Qingshao, who was far away in the Lian country, also had such thoughts. At this time, Zhang Qingshao was sitting on a hill. The hill was neither tall nor big, only a few feet high and several feet wide. Above the hill, the bright scenic bell emitted an orange-yellow brilliance that covered Zhang Qingshao and a jade table. On top of the jade table, there was a strange wine bottle and several jade cups. The light red wine in the jade cups emitted a clear wine fragrance that filled the entire light barrier. Zhang Qingshao lazily sat on the white blanket, his left hand holding a jade cup. Just as the cup left his mouth, those slightly squinted eyes, the smiling corners of his mouth, and the slight tapping of the index and middle fingers of his right hand on the jade table, all of them showed that he was enjoying himself. This small mound was just one of the many yellow hills of varying sizes in this boundless wasteland. Zhang Qingshao didn't know how many similar mounds there were in front of her, but she didn't know how many of them there were behind her. Xiaohua, this guy, what is he doing? He actually killed the Imperial Thunder Sect's Marshal Kuan? Zhang Qingshao naturally received Zhang Jihao's secret report. The corner of his mouth faintly flickered with mockery. This guy even said that I was vicious and merciless. What about himself? He didn't even put his own master in his eyes and easily killed them. Is this the attitude of a junior? Moreover, this is a great battle of Tao cultivators. Your hands are itchy, can't you kill a few more sword cultivators? Even if Marshal Kuan wants to curry favor with Taoist Jingru and has some thoughts about you. Could it be that Marshal Kuan has already made his move? Zhang Qingshao suddenly came to a realization, damn, this little junior brother of mine is really amazing. Marshal Kuan is a golden core cultivator, and he already made his move. Didn't this guy Xiao Hua just build his foundation? He can actually escape from a golden core cultivator's palm. Not simple, not simple. If it wasn't for Xiao Hua, that whatever stick, even I wouldn't have guessed that Marshal Kuan was actually Xiao Hua in disguise. Where did Xiao Hua's disguise technique come from? He's actually much more powerful than I am. It seems like my little junior brother's background isn't simple. Fortunately, this is my little junior brother. If he was my enemy, humph, let alone an enemy, with such a person on Xiaoyu continent, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Fortunately. Also, what does our Vice Alliance leader Luo want to do? He actually has dealings with people of my demon sect. My heavenly demon sect's vice sect leader Yin Meng seems to be under the Vice Alliance leader? Or maybe he's here to contact Vice Alliance leader Luo. Vice sect leader Yin has been very busy recently. Unfortunately, his Grand Cosmos shifting token has always been in my little junior brother's storage bag. This guy can't catch up to Xiao Hua's fleeing footsteps no matter how hard he tries. Should I tell him that Xiao Hua went to the sword tomb? Or maybe Xiong Huasong will tell him without me informing him? Not necessarily. Zhang Qingxiao shook her head again. I'm afraid Xiong Huasong doesn't know about Yin Meng, right? Xiong Huasong can only tell Zhang Zhihao about Xiao Hua, but he can't directly inform Yin Meng. But that's not right. According to Xiao Hua, he obtained this grand cosmos shifting token at the Feather Immortal Assembly. This thing should have been sent to the Changbai sect for Taoist Jingyu, right? This Xiong Huasong is a cultivator of the Profound Sky sect, so how did he know that the grand cosmos shifting token is with Xiao Hua? Humph. It must have been a disciple of the Profound Sky sect who handed this thing to the unlucky Fan Tong at the Feather Immortal Assembly. Lu Weigang has already said this. Taoist Jingyu is extremely protective, so he will definitely avenge Fan Tong. Looks like my little junior brother's situation is not good. Since Zhang Zhihao noticed Xiao Hua, that old Vice Alliance leader Luo naturally also saw Xiao Hua. Taoist Jingyu is about to head to the Sky Patrol City. Little junior brother is surrounded by enemies. Chapter 2575. I've already told him to come and be my Heavenly Demon Sect's vice sect leader. I can also send my disciples to help him. But I have to find a way to hide my connection with him. Oh, right, what's the name of the disciple who sent the elixir to Xiao Hua? I can't let him live a moment longer. This guy only knows how to flaunt his superiority and fight alone. How could he know how wonderful it is to have the Heavenly Demon Sect as his backing? I don't have to do it myself. Naturally, my subordinates will deliver the Taiching sect's wine. Xiao Hua wants to drink it, but can he drink it? Alas, I don't know how Yu Tong is doing. I don't know if the words I taught her could deceive those swords. However, even if she couldn't deceive them, they wouldn't do anything out of line to her, right? Speaking of which, it's strange. Where did Zhang Yuha go? She's really dead and nowhere to be seen. It's very strange. Just when Zhang Qingxiao was both intoxicated and worried, she suddenly felt a jolt in her heart. She looked up and saw that not far ahead, a scarlet mist flashed, and a messaging charm appeared outside the light shield. But Zhang Qingxiao snapped her fingers, and a small crack appeared on the light shield. The message talisman rushed in through the crack, and naturally, a few strands of the yellow dust in the sky also seeped in. Zhang Qingxiao's divine sense entered the message talisman and looked at it. A strange look appeared on her face. She snorted coldly and waved her hand. The message talisman flew out again. Oof, the great vice sect leader Yin of the Heavenly Demon Sect is coming. He's really arrogant. He didn't even write anything on the message talisman, only the word, Yin. Damn it, it seems that he really thinks he's the first vice sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect. Zhang Qingxiao sneered and waved her hand to destroy the spirit wine that had fallen into the yellow dust. However, just as her fingers touched the wine cup, she stopped and a smile appeared on her face. After a while, a faint black shadow appeared in the yellow dust. The shape of the shadow couldn't be seen. It looked like a human figure, but also like a floating mist. When the shadow got closer, the figure was revealed. Io, vice sect leader Yin. Zhang Qingxiao hurriedly got up and waved her hand, as if she was lifting up a curtain, parting the brilliance of the bright scenic bell. Please come in, please come in. It had only been 10 months since they last met, but the vice sect master's invisibility technique had improved by leaps and bounds. Fortunately, it's noon right now. If it was dusk or night, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to see it. Yin Meng's lips curled into a proud smile. She didn't care about the brilliance of the bright scenic bell at all. Then, she went in without hesitation. It was as if he didn't care that he had entered the range of Zhang Qingxiao's magical weapon. Zhang Qingxiao understood that it was not because Yin Meng was not worried about her, but because Yin Meng was extremely confident in his own cultivation and was not afraid that Zhang Qingxiao would do anything to him. Yin Meng stood on the silk carpet and glanced around with a smile. Sect leader Zhang really knows how to enjoy life. Tasting the sweet bamboo liquid in this Lian country filled with yellow soil really makes this old man envious. This old man is troubled by the trivial matters of Tiangang sect every day. I really want to learn from sect master Zhang and steal half a day of leisure. Zhang Qingxiao wasn't angry because Yin Meng didn't call her Lord Sect Master and only called her Sect Leader Zhang. Instead, she was extremely polite. She cupped her hands and said, "How can this Zhang be qualified? It's only because of some Yin Zhe that I can become the sect leader of Heavenly Demon Sect. When it comes to talent and governance, how can I compare to Vice Sect Leader Yin? As for the cultivation of demonic arts, don't even mention it. My Heavenly Demon 13 sects still has to rely on Vice Sect Leader Yin, this kind of person with outstanding talent. Especially Vice Sect Leader Yin, who is the first Vice Sect Leader of Heavenly Demon Sect. All of the sect's affairs, no matter how big or small, rely on Vice Sect Leader Yin's participation. The capable do more work, it doesn't matter." Yin Meng sat down unceremoniously, and Zhang Qingxiao hurriedly waved his hand and said, "This sect leader has just fallen. If Vice Sect Leader Yin doesn't mind, please drink a few cups, how about it?" "Haha, thank you Sect Leader Zhang. To be able to make Sect Leader Zhang personally pour wine, this Heavenly Demon Sect, this old man is the first." He laughed sinisterly and made a grabbing motion with his hand. 5 wisps of faint black mist flew out from his fingertips, grabbing the spirit wine from the wine cups. He opened his mouth, and the scarlet liquid fell into his mouth. Phew! After the wine entered his stomach, Yin Meng let out a long breath and praised, "Sure enough, it's Tai Ching Sect's famous sweet bamboo liquid. It really lives up to its reputation. If Vice Sect Leader Yin likes it, you can drink a few more cups." Zhang Qingxiao reached out and personally raised the wine cup, poured wine for Yin Meng and said, "This sect leader only has this little hobby. I didn't expect Vice Sect Leader Yin to like it too? Who wouldn't like such a good wine?" Yin Meng rolled his eyes at Zhang Qingxiao and said, "However, if you want to drink such good wine often, there must be a price." Yes, Zhang Qingxiao pretended not to know what Yin Meng said, and raised his thumb and said, "It turns out that Vice Sect Leader Yin is also an expert in this field. This sect leader came here to drink the sweet bamboo liquid because this spirit wine is brewed from the pure earth attribute sweet bamboo fruit. It can only be drunk in a place with extremely rich earth attribute spirit chi of heaven and earth to taste its best taste." Oh! Obviously Yin Meng didn't know this story, but he also raised his eyebrows and said, "So Sect Leader Zhang also knows about it." This sect leader just found out. Zhang Qingxiao smiled wholeheartedly, and it seemed that he didn't change his attitude because of Yin Meng's attitude. Yin Meng poured a few more cups, and Zhang Qingxiao also accompanied at the same time. After a long while, he asked tentatively, "By the way, Vice Sect Leader Yin came here from afar. What's the matter?" "It's not a big matter. He just wanted to ask about the establishment of the Heavenly Demon Sect." Yin Meng seemed to be asking a junior. "Oh, this matter is a big matter of my Heavenly Demon Sect." Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, "Although my Heavenly Demon Sect has been established long ago, and even has some influence on the Dawn Rain continent, it's not completely open yet. Under the planning of the various Vice Sect leaders, especially Vice Sect Leader Yin, our sect leader has already made arrangements according to the previous discussion. All the preparations have been completed, and it can be said that everything is ready except for the east wind. Good. When the nascent soul cultivators from the 3 cultivation countries go to the Sky Patrol City, my Heavenly Demon Sect will be established when they don't care. When the battle between the Tao cultivators is over, my Heavenly Demon Sect will also have a firm foothold. What can the dozens of Tao sects do to my Heavenly Demon Sect?" Yin Meng said proudly. Zhang Qingxiao's face showed a trace of hesitation, and there was a trace of fear as he said in a low voice, "Actually, Vice Sect Leader Yin, this sect leader feels that the current situation of my Heavenly Demon Sect is already very good. The number of disciples is slowly increasing, and the influence of the 13 demon sects is also gradually expanding. There's no need for us to establish a sect right away. It won't be too late to establish a sect after our strength is consolidated, and when we can completely resist the Tao sect, right? If those nascent soul cultivators send their disciples to annihilate us, This sect leader is afraid that the good situation from before will be gone forever. What do you know? Yin Meng sneered. This is the best time for my heavenly demon sect to establish a sect. The Dao sect has placed their focus on the sword cultivators, and they don't have the strength to take care of my demon sect. The sword Dao battle? You don't have to worry. As the saying goes, to kill 1,000 enemies, you lose 800 of your own men. When those Dao sect cultivators extricate themselves from the sword Dao battle, their strength will be almost depleted. How will they have the energy to attack my demon sect? Once my demon sect stands out in the Dawn Rain mainland, the number of disciples joining my demon sect will be 100 or 1,000 times more than before. The 13 demon sects will soon become an existence comparable to the 13 cultivation sects. When that time comes, even if the Dao sect sects have the strength to annihilate us, will they still dare to do so? Will they still dare to start a Daoist demon war? Yes, this sect leader is not very proficient in these things. Zhang Qingshao smiled awkwardly and said, even thinking about it gives me a headache. The demons of the demon realm are not good at these things. Yes, this old man knows this. That's why I really lowered myself to help you. Yin Meng nodded and pointed to the west, saying mysteriously, this old man received some fragmentary information. Over there, the people who are coming, I'm afraid they'll be coming soon. We have to establish the 13 demon sects before they come and let them see that we have a great situation here. Ah? They're coming so soon? Zhang Qingshao was extremely delighted, but also a little panicked. Sect leader Zhang, don't be afraid. Yin Meng seemed to have seen through Zhang Qingxiao's thoughts and said with a smile, you've established the 13 demon sects. With such a great contribution, no matter who comes, won't they want you to be the sect leader? Besides, even if it's me, I'm now the deputy sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect. I'll definitely put in a good word for sect leader Zhang. Thank you, deputy sect leader Yin. Zhang Qingshao even bowed and thanked him. Everything depends on deputy sect leader Yin. If the people from that side come, you must properly introduce them to this sect leader. That's natural. Yin Meng stood up and said, this is also an important matter for this old man to come here today. You just have to do well in establishing the sect. No matter how badly you do other things, nothing will happen. Yes, this sect leader understands. Zhang Qingshao was still respectful. Which sword cultivator's little lady? Yin Meng looked around and said with a smile, why don't you call her out for this old man to see? This sect leader is already a little tired of looking at her. She wanted to go sightseeing, so this sect leader sent a few disciples to follow her. I'm afraid she's already in Meng Kingdom. Zhang Qingshao said with a smile. So sect leader Zhang is already tired of her. Yin Meng's eyes showed a trace of a smile, and he looked Zhang Qingshao up and down and said, this old man thinks that the little lady is not bad. This sect leader knows. This sect leader knows. Zhang Qingshao smiled apologetically, wait for this sect leader's arrangements in the future. Thank you sect leader Zhang. Yin Meng laughed loudly, stood up, and cupped his hands, saying, this old man still has a lot of things to do in Tiangang sect, so I won't accompany sect leader Zhang. Goodbye. Chapter 2576. I'll send Vice Sect Leader Yin off. Zhang Qingshao respectfully opened the bright scenic bells light screen and said with a smile. No need. Yin Meng waved his hand and said, with such yellow dust, I still have to use my invisibility technique. I'm afraid you won't be able to catch up. That's right. Then I'll send Vice Sect Leader off with my eyes. Zhang Qingshao suddenly understood and slapped his own forehead with a smile. Zhang Qingshao waited for Yin Meng to turn into a wisp of smoke and fly away in a seemingly slow but swift manner. She then closed the light screen of the bright scenic bell. The corners of her mouth curled into a cold smile as a trace of viciousness surfaced in her eyes. With a wave of her hand, a bright red flame flashed. Not only were the jade cups and wine bottles used by Yin Meng turned into dust, even the jade table and silk blanket were turned into dust. Zhang Qingshao took out another silk blanket and wine bottle and sat down again. Yin Meng, that old bastard, bullied me too much. Zhang Qingshao swore inwardly, but then he laughed again. It was a very carefree laugh. Isn't this what I want? In this world, people without strength can only be looked down upon by others. They can only be humiliated by others and feel unreconciled. But am I that kind of person? Didn't you see that my junior brother could casually kill a middle-stage golden core cultivator? He even used the face of a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator to fool around in the Imperial Thunder sect. Since he dared to kill Marshal Kuan, he naturally dared to kill Chen Mo naturally. Damn it, that Tu Hong wouldn't be here to kill, right? Hee, Xiaohua killed so many famous cultivators, but he still calmly stayed among the cultivators and no one suspected him. Wasn't he just relying on his cultivation to cover up? I can easily kill Yin Meng, but what about the people behind him? That bullshit Vice Alliance leader Luo, and those devil sect people who are coming, and there seems to be a lot more. How can I kill them all at once? Forget it, a real man knows when to yield and when not. I still let Yin Meng look down on me. So what? Zhang Qingshao reached out and picked up a cup of sweet bamboo liquor and laughed. Aren't you all still being played by me in the palm of my hand? Other than me and senior sister, who else knows that Xiaohua is my junior brother? Other than Zhang Zhihao, even Vice Alliance leader Luo himself doesn't know that it's just my clone. Ha! What a joke! Zhang Qingshao laughed heartily for a moment, and then his expression calmed down again. Even though it was extremely rare for him to reveal his inner thoughts like this, if Yin Meng hadn't mentioned Zhang Yutong just now, how could he have had such an opportunity? The yellow dust outside the light barrier was still the same. Even when night fell, not only did it show no signs of stopping, it even began to wreak havoc, dyeing the horizon yellow. Originally, one could still see the desolation of blood, but now, it had turned into an earthy yellow color, giving off a very filthy feeling. Forget it. Zhang Qingshao waved her hand and stood up. She sighed. In the bleak dusk, the sunset always makes people nostalgic. Unfortunately, it's Yutong's favorite. When she was here, even the heavens took care of her. Today, I came here to watch the sunset and wanted to feel it. Who knew that not only would Yin Meng disturb me, even the heavens wouldn't give me face. Just as Zhang Qingshao stood up, a scarlet communication talisman landed in front of him. Zhang Qingshao impatiently reached out and took the communication talisman. After looking at it for a moment, his expression turned serious. He raised his head and pondered for a moment. Then, with a tap of his hand, the communication talisman flew away. Then, Zhang Qingshao stood there straight and looked to the west with his hands clasped behind his back. In that earthy yellow area, half a hazy setting sun slowly set. Disciple greets sect master. A similarly faint black fog drifted over from the yellow dust. When it landed on the ground, the black fog didn't hesitate to kneel on the ground, revealing a humble figure. In his hand was a pitch-black magic slip, and he held it above his head with both hands. This humble one has a jade slip for Lord. This humble one didn't dare to delay and specially sent it over. Zhang Qingshao was slightly taken aback. With a wave of his hand, the magic slip fell into his hand. However, he didn't care about it. He glanced at it briefly and threw it on the jade table beside him. Then, he looked at the disciple kneeling on the ground and snorted coldly. He asked, how is the situation with the establishment of my demonic 13 sects? Why aren't you properly taking care of things in the country of Shi? Why did you come to the country of Lien for an insignificant jade slip? Yes, sect master understands. That disciple lowered his head and didn't dare to raise it. He carefully said, the three aristocratic families in the country of Shi, Huai Xian's Fan family and Fan Qiu's Zhao family have long been under our control. Now, we only need to change their recruitment. As for Jia Ran's Zhao family, we have already arranged disciples nearby. As long as sect master gives the order, this humble one's disciples can quickly control Jia Ran's Zhao family. These three families are in the shape of the character. They can be the foundation of our demonic 13 sects in the country of Shi. You all have contributed greatly to the establishment of the demonic 13 sects. Zhang Qingshao nodded. What about the country of Meng? This, according to sect master's arrangement, the foundation of the three aristocratic families, Qian City's Ming family, Mo City's Qi family, and Yi City's Qian family, will be the foundation of our demonic 13 sects in the country of Meng. However, other than the Yi City's Qian family, which currently has a 90% chance, the other two families only have a 50% chance. After all, there are other cultivation sects nearby these two families. This humble one is afraid that our demonic 13 sects will make a move. They may not just stand by and watch. You don't have to worry about this. Zhang Qingshao waved his hand. If they know what's good for them, then let's forget about it. If they dare to make a move, then we'll just eliminate them all. Yes, this humble one understands. That disciple said again. The establishment of sects in the country of Lian is much faster than the other two countries. The Qianping Ridge's Huang family, Demonic Cave's Chong family, and Fanyi Mountain's Wang family are all under sect master's control. They can change their sects at any time. This humble one really admires them. Ha Yin, when did you learn to flatter this sect master? Zhang Qingshao laughed out loud. These three families in the country of Lian were originally the secret hands of our demonic 13 sects. They were cultivated decades ago. If this sect master couldn't control them now, how could he dare to establish the demonic 13 sects? This humble one admires sect master for this. The disciple named Yin said respectfully. The demonic 13 sects were established by sect masters single-handedly. Moreover, it started decades ago. It's only now that you've revealed your ferocious side. If it were this humble one, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to hold back 20 years ago. Do you think I didn't want to establish a sect earlier? Zhang Qingshao laughed and scolded. In the past, my strength wasn't enough. Now that I have the 13 deputy sect masters, I have the courage to speak. If it weren't for you, I would still be holding back. I wouldn't dare. We all relied on sect master's talent. Yin said hurriedly. If it weren't for sect master, how could we have today's status and achievements? How could we have a firm foothold in front of the Dao sect cultivators? Moreover, we have to rely on sect master to stand up to them in the future. We really can't do anything. Zhang Qingshao enjoyed it in her heart, and the corners of her mouth curled into a slight smile. Ever since this humble one entered the demonic 13 sects, I've treated the demonic 13 sects as my home. It's a place where this humble one can shelter from the wind and rain in the future. Yin still didn't dare to look up as he said humbly, moreover, sect master's great talent and bold vision has left this humble one in awe. To be honest, this humble one has considered the future development of the demonic 13 sects, but this humble one really didn't expect that sect master would establish a sect in the three cultivation countries at once. This way, our demonic 13 sects will become a colossus. This humble one's thoughts are really insignificant compared to sect masters. I'm afraid you don't understand, right? Zhang Qingshao said with a smile. Sect master is really godly. Yin raised his head at this moment. His fair and clear face revealed a shrewd look, and his eyes flashed with admiration. No one would associate him with a demonic cultivator. This humble one has never dared to ask, afraid that it would disturb sect master's train of thought. Now that everything is ready, please enlighten me, sect master. We were talking about forbearance just now. Yin, you're really forbearing. Speak, you're the second deputy sect master of the demonic 13 sects. This sect has nothing to hide from you. Zhang Qingshao said with a nod. Actually, there's nothing too suspicious. This humble one just feels that although our demonic 13 sects have a lot of people, the cultivation of our disciples is still shallow and can't be compared to those cultivation sects. Even if we establish a sect, it's best to find a slightly remote place that's easy to defend and hard to attack. We don't even want to be discovered by them. Yin smiled apologetically. Moreover, sect master has established 3 bases in each of the 3 cultivation countries at once. Isn't this just dividing the power of our demonic 13 sects? Each base will only have 30% of our power? Moreover, the development of the 3 demonic 13 sects will definitely be different. Which demonic 13 sect is the real demonic 13 sect? Ha! Zhang Qingshao laughed. He knew in his heart that Yin might not be ignorant. However, he still asked this question. On one hand, it was to express his respect for him, which showed that he was really humble. On the other hand, it was also to express his unswerving loyalty to the demonic 13 sect and his concern for its development. In the face of Zhang Qingxiao's laughter, Yi Yin's expression was normal, as if he was really asking for advice. Yi Yin, didn't you say so yourself? The cultivation of our demonic 13 sect's disciples is generally shallow, and the newly recruited disciples are all useless. It's not suitable for us to go against the cultivation sects directly. In that case, 100,000 people and 30,000 people are all the same in the eyes of the cultivation sects. Since that's the case, why don't we divide the 100,000 people into 3 groups? We can directly divert the attention of the Tao sect's cultivators. Moreover, in this way, our demonic 13 sect, which originally had 1 base, will now have 3 bases. Won't our reputation be even greater? Moreover, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Our demonic 13 sect has 3 bases all of a sudden. How would they know which one is the real demonic 13 sect? Although the 3 cultivation countries are all Tao sects, they are not one country or sect. If they want to deal with our demonic 13 sect, they will definitely have to join forces. There will also be dirty tricks involved. Isn't this a good thing for our demonic 13 sect? Chapter 2577. Yi Yin nodded hurriedly. Yes. They thought that Lord Sect Master set up a maze, but who would know that these 3 places are the true foundations of our heavenly demon sect? As for the development between the 3 foundations that you mentioned, there's even less to worry about. Zhang Qingshao continued. Fiendish cultivators like us emphasize on bloodshed. Whoever develops better, our sect will invest more in that person. The 13 sects of heavenly demon sect. Perhaps in the end, there's only one sect that can stand tall in the Dawn Rain continent. Or perhaps it can develop into 30 sects. Please, will depend on you. Yes, I understand. I'll definitely sacrifice my life for the development of our heavenly demon sect. Yi Yin bowed in admiration. Yi Yin, remember, heavenly demon sect is our heavenly demon sect. Your development is the development of our heavenly demon sect, and your improvement is the improvement of our heavenly demon sect. Your heavenly Brahmin sect is also a part of my heavenly demon sect. Supporting the heavenly Brahmin sect is the greatest support for my sect. If your Tianfan sect develops well in the future, you can even establish your own sect and be the master of your own sect. Zhang Qingshao said earnestly. Yi Yin's eyes flashed with a trace of fanaticism when he heard that, but he concealed it immediately and knelt on the ground. I only need to follow Lord Sect Master's footsteps. I don't dare to think too much. Up to you. Whatever you think, our sect will support it. Zhang Qingshao nodded and took out a storage bag. She handed it to Yi Yin and said, "This is the reward from Tianggang sect. You can deal with it as you see fit." Thank you, Lord Sect Master. Yin took the storage bag, scanned it with his divine telekinesis, and immediately bowed in joy. After Yi Yin left, Zhang Qingshao couldn't wait to reach out and pick up the fiendish bamboo slip again. She pointed her finger, and a blood-colored mist shot into the fiendish bamboo slip. The blood-colored brilliance on the fiendish bamboo slip flickered like a ball of blood. It was only after a while that the fiendish bamboo slip was slightly white. What's going on? Zhang Qingshao immersed his divine sense into the magic bamboo slip that had its restriction lifted. He couldn't help but be shocked. That Prajna Paramitha Heart Sutra was given to junior sister by Xiao Hua. I have also carefully looked at it. It is a Buddhist sect's cultivation method. There is nothing strange about it. That's why I was relieved to have someone send it over. How could this Jiang Luer lose consciousness after cultivating? Motherfucker, I'm in a terrible fix. Zhang Qingshao slapped his forehead and was about to get up in annoyance. However, after he put away the jade table, he smiled bitterly. When it comes to junior sister, my heart is in a mess. I'm a devil cultivator, not a Buddhist. What's the use of me going there? The one who tied the bell should untie it. If they wanted to find Jiang Luer's illness, Xiaohua had to go. But this guy was in the sword tomb. If I don't go, who can find him? Forget it, I'll tell junior martial sister first. Anyway, it's useless for me to go. Zhang Qingshao was also helpless. He wrote something in the magic bamboo slip and then pointed his hand. The blood-red mist appeared again. When it's time to ask Xiaohua for help, we'll go together. When the mist on the message talisman disappeared, Zhang Qingshao put away the bright scenic bell. His body was suffused with a faint brilliance, blocking the yellow soil outside his body. His figure flashed slightly and disappeared. That figure was like an antelope hanging its horn without a trace. It was many times more brilliant than Yin Meng. Zhang Qingshao was thinking about going to the sword tomb to find Xiaohua. However, even if he really went to the sword tomb, it might not be easy to find Xiaohua at this time. Because Xiaohua had already gone deep into the sword tomb following the instructions of the magic bamboo slip. At the periphery of the sword tomb, there was an endless stretch of purple jasmine flowers. Even for a male cultivator like Xiaohua, when he looked at it, his eyes were filled with gorgeous purple. He couldn't help but be intoxicated. Not to mention women like Formless Sword Guyu, they also saw the purple that spread between heaven and earth as the most beautiful scene in the sword tomb. However, the sword tomb, which was known as one of the 10 most dangerous places in the country of Xi, had shed its gorgeous outer layer and revealed its sinister side in front of Xiaohua. As Xiaohua went deeper, the purple jasmine flowers gradually became sparse. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of blood-red vegetation. This vegetation had already existed when the purple jasmine flowers were still flourishing. However, it was stuck to the ground and was covered by the purple. Now that the pure purple had become thinner, this blood-red color was revealed. Moreover, the weather inside the sword tomb was different from the outside. Gradually, the dark clouds above Xiaohua's head became thicker and the wind became more bitingly cold. If the winter's cold wind was said to be as cold as a knife to the people of the secular world, then the cold wind inside the sword tomb was really like a knife. Not to mention the bone-piercing cold, the wind blades that often rolled up in the wind also slightly stirred up the light protecting Xiaohua's body. Sometimes, the light even faintly flickered, forcing Xiaohua to constantly urge his magic power. The strangest thing was, from time to time, a few bean-sized raindrops would also drip down. Under this kind of cold weather, these raindrops didn't condense. Instead, each raindrop contained an extremely strong force and was even somewhat sharp. Every time it hit Xiaohua's body, it was like a small flying sword attacking him. Damn it, that Yu Tong is really determined to kill me. The more Xiaohua flew in, the more alarmed he became. This strange phenomenon in the sword tomb must be caused by the remnant sword intent. Those hundreds of thousands, millions of battle spirits would also add fuel to the fire. Under this kind of extreme situation, this young master was only an early foundation establishment cultivator at that time. How could he resist? I'm afraid that before I reached this place, I would have already been buried under the purple jasmine flowers. But Yutong, he was only a 10th layer qi refining brat at that time. Why did he come here? Or what is the Huanhua sect doing here? Xiaohua muttered again. Didn't Zhong Haoren say it? These 2 years, we met many cultivation families, but we didn't see many Huanhua sect disciples. Then why did Yun Greichong and the others suddenly come here? Didn't they participate in the war? Huanhua sect, Huanhua sect. This young master sincerely wanted to enter the Huanhua sect that day, but not only was this Yu Tong's senior meddling, he was also threatened in the main hall. Since this young master came here today, I want to see what kind of tricks you were playing that day. Xiaohua originally resented Yu Tong's insidiousness, but when he thought about how dangerous this place was, and how Yu Tong was only 100% qi refining cultivator at that time, and now he was only at the early stage of foundation establishment, he might not even be able to reach the middle stage of foundation establishment. Back then, he needed someone to protect him when he went to this sword tomb, so he definitely wouldn't go deep into this place. Thus, his thoughts of looking for Yu Tong faded. Huan, a huge sound of water splashing could be heard in the air. The raindrops that were just drizzling a moment ago suddenly became bigger, sprinkling down like a torrential downpour. The protective brilliance around Xiao Hua's body flickered. It's a bit strange. Xiao Hua hurriedly urged his magic power to maintain the protective brilliance. While he raised his head to look at the already pitch-black night sky, he couldn't see the slightest bit of starlight. He thought very strangely, this sword tomb's rainstorm, doesn't it have thunder? It seems that ever since this young master entered the sword tomb, I haven't heard the sound of thunder. Thinking this, Xiao Hua pricked up his ears. Sure enough, his ears were filled with the sound of raindrops falling. There wasn't the slightest bit of sonorous thunder. Hee, the world is so big that nothing is too strange. Xiao Hua laughed inwardly. Today, my horizons have been broadened again. After flying for a while, the entire sword tomb was pitch black. The rainwater that was like the Milky Way hanging upside down was like the flying sword of a swordsman, attacking Xiao Hua from top to bottom all the time. Xiao Hua gradually felt impatient. As a result, Xiao Hua took out the jade slip again. His divine sense was just about to enter it to check when suddenly, Xiao Hua felt that within a few dozen feet to his left, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly transformed, and a burst of intense sword chi was born from all around. Who? Xiao Hua coldly shouted, his Buddhist sense sweeping over, but he saw that the surroundings were empty. There wasn't any swordsman's figure. Moreover, at this time, the space near Xiao Hua's left had a faint feeling of sharpness and gravity. His Buddhist sense was unconsciously obstructed, and was firmly suppressed by that gravity, unable to go very far. Seeing that his Buddhist sense was suppressed, Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless. His figure suddenly stopped in midair, his eyes vigilantly sweeping all around. Wung wung, a burst of sword cries rose from the distance, like a swarm of bees, becoming increasingly louder. Not good. It's a remnant sword array. Xiao Hua felt a swift and fierce sword intent approaching, and a layer of goosebumps unconsciously appeared on his arms. A kind of vigilance also appeared in his heart, and he immediately understood. As a result, his figure hastily flashed to the side. Xiao Hua's ethereal steps was already very mysterious, and at this time, with the addition of the wind evasion, his entire body was like a wisp of smoke, floating without a trace of smoke. In the blink of an eye, he had moved more than one zhang. The instant he dodged, 5 sword lights simultaneously rushed out from a pentagonal area around Xiao Hua. Those sword lights were of different colors, and they flew straight into the air, stabbing towards the place where Xiao Hua was previously standing. Moreover, those sword lights trembled slightly, and along with this strange trembling fluctuation, those sword lights rapidly expanded. By the time they stabbed in front of Xiao Hua, it had already become a 5-colored sword screen, flatly covering an area of more than 10 zhang. Although Xiao Hua had dodged more than 1 zhang, that place was still where the sword lights were attacking. What kind of sword array is this? Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and without hesitation, he waved his hand and took out the wishful steel staff. He waved it casually, protecting his body without a drop of water leaking out. King king king. Like raindrops hitting a boulder, the sound was unceasing. The sword lights were all blocked by the wishful steel staff. Every time the sword light fell on the wishful steel staff, the weight in Xiao Hua's hand increased by a little. Not long after, the weight of the wishful steel staff was quite considerable. Isn't the wishful steel staff not known to be in the 5 elements? Xiao Hua was a little depressed. How come the influence of the sword array is reduced in this sword array? It seems that the demonic tool is not in the 5 elements. When the wishful steel staff was added to the demonic tool during the refining process, although the weight increased, it was contaminated with the 5 elements. The gains did not make up for the losses. Chapter 2578. However, just as Xiao Hua was thinking about how to break this sword formation, the five-colored sword curtain was suddenly cut off. The entire night sky was only left with the sound of dripping rain. The buzzing sound of the sword had completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared at all. Xiaohua let out a long sigh. He held the wishful staff in his hand and stood hesitantly in the air. The sword formation had appeared and disappeared suddenly. Moreover, the power of the sword formation was very fierce. It seemed to be more mysterious than the seven-star sword formation that he could set up. If this sword formation had not suddenly disappeared, he was afraid that he would have to spend more effort to break it. Since he had just entered the center of the sword tomb and encountered such a powerful sword formation, then there were probably more broken sword formations inside. The sword formations must be even more powerful. Was it necessary for him to continue moving forward? At this moment, the distant sword tomb stretched out. Suddenly, a strong silver-white brilliance flashed. It was very obvious in this pitch-black darkness. This silver brilliance was like a flying dragon, but also like a fierce tiger. It circled in the distance and rushed into the sky. It rapidly fell down, and when the distance disappeared into the night, a roaring sound like a dragon and a leaping tiger passed into Xiaohua's ears. This hissing sound was like a stone that had been thrown into the lake. With a splash, the stone disappeared, but the ripples on the surface of the lake continued to ripple. They slowly rippled across the entire surface of the lake and didn't calm down for a long time. The hissing sound quickly disappeared. However, following that, wung wung wung, sorrowful sword cries were attracted by the hissing sound. One after another, they appeared in the distance and rushed towards the surroundings of the sword tomb as if they were spreading. The area where Xiaohua was at was naturally affected as well. Low and high sword cries rose and fell one after another. Even the area where the sword formation was located at the 5 stars also let out a dull hiss at the same time. Rumble! Within the Buddhist flames, Punisher Dream and Mountain Splitter were actually attracted by the sword hum as well. Within the Buddhist flames, they were itching to give it a try. Even the 7 sword orbs that hadn't been nurtured before seemed to be jumping about. Xiaohua's primordial spirit, which was in the Dream Executioner's primordial spirit, suddenly jumped. Sorrow, longing, competitiveness, and unyielding emotions filled his primordial spirit. He even had the impulse to charge into the sword cry. Xiaohua's heart stirred. His flying sword had been nurtured for a long time, but it hadn't produced sword intent for a long time. Now that his primordial spirit had such a perception, wasn't it the best opportunity? Almost without thinking, Xiaohua opened his mouth, and Dream Executioner and Mountain Splitter flew out. Wung, wung! 2 lively sword cries rushed into the night sky, echoing with the other sword cries. At the same time, a feeling of carefreeness, freedom, and responsibility filled Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua immediately tossed that trace of hesitation to the back of his mind. The Tao of the flying sword is precisely about moving forward courageously, becoming stronger when faced with danger. If one is overcautious and hesitant, how can one become a supreme flying sword? This young master has known about this path for a long time. However, whenever I encounter danger, I feel a bit fearful. I have to think about how to avoid it. How can I become a flying sword? Forget it, forget it, forget it. No matter how powerful this sword tomb is, this young master still has to take a look. Otherwise, how can I face Senior Li Xiubai? Wang Xiaohua's heroic spirit soared to the sky. The 2 flying swords were also happy. As the flying swords vibrated, the sword cry was also loud and clear. Unexpectedly, it provoked the nearby countless flying swords to cry out. Xiaohua was rather stunned. He originally thought that since he had just touched the central edge of the sword tomb, there wouldn't be many broken flying swords. However, he didn't expect that he had already been trapped in countless flying swords. When he thought of the countless flying swords inside the sword tomb, Xiaohua's astonishment completely disappeared. He was even somewhat secretly delighted. It must be known that these flying swords were the remnants of tens of thousands of years old. Xiaohua absolutely wouldn't believe that they hadn't turned into swords. However, just as Xiaohua's greed was born, This greed was dispelled by the indescribable reverence from the flying swords. The two flying swords hovered in the air above the sword catacomb as if they had returned to a different home. The countless sword wills nearby were the companions and seniors of the flying swords. These flying swords were broken here and laid to rest here. This was the place where they had fought bravely in the past. Just like the countless brave swordsmen and cultivators, no matter what they had fought for, they had fulfilled their duties and done what they should have done. Their corpses were laid to rest here. This place should be respected by all living beings, not destroyed and harassed. Great! Understanding this, Xiaohua's mind was immediately filled with compassion. He had long since abandoned the idea of taking the broken swords out of the ground. His slightly opened left hand also quietly closed. Xiaohua even slightly bowed, as if he was saluting the countless flying swords, revering their solemn and stirring moments before they were broken. The sword tomb has always existed. These flying swords have never been taken away by sword cultivators. Perhaps this is the meaning. This is the mausoleum of the broken swords. The best thing to do is to not disturb them and let them rest peacefully. Xiaohua suddenly understood the meaning of the sword tomb. Inside the flying swords, his entire primordial spirit was surrounded by a warm feeling. It was as if only at this moment did the primordial spirit he planted inside the flying swords was recognized by the flying swords. A layer of hazy yet clear veil blocked in front of his primordial spirit. It was as if as long as he could see what was behind the veil, the sword intent that Xiaohua longed for would be born. Unfortunately, it was as if he was missing an opportunity. This veil still existed. Let's go. Xiaohua smiled and looked into the distance. The sound of the swords was still gradually fading. Perhaps the answer is there. With two whooshes, the Dream Executor and Mountain Splitter landed at Xiaohua's feet. Xiaohua didn't use any other flying techniques. He urged the flying swords to fly. In the dark night, the two red and green flying swords weren't very conspicuous. However, they flew towards the center of the sword tomb with a clear heart that pursued the path of the sword. However, in the time it took for Xiaohua to smoke half a cigarette, he heard a light tearing sound, as if silk had been torn apart. The raindrops that had been splashing around Xiaohua suddenly decreased in size, and when Xiaohua's body became sluggish, the raindrops actually disappeared without a trace. This is bad. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. I just encountered a broken sword array. I'm afraid it's a Dao sect array? Sure enough, just as Xiaohua's figure flashed and retreated backwards, a kacha-kacha sound rang out from several li to the left of Xiaohua. In mid-air, an earth-shattering restrictive force was suddenly born. It was as if a palm that was several li in size had suddenly curled up. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, the seal of turning the sea flew out. An earth-yellow brilliance enveloped Xiaohua. Only then was the restrictive force barely lifted. This restrictive force seems to be comparable to a talisman from a nascent soul's hand. Xiaohua pondered in midair. Moreover, the restrictive force of a nascent soul's hand condenses from all directions towards the center. This array is completely born in the entire space. It's as if there's a tiny nascent soul's hand in every inch of space. I don't know how many years this array has been here. Even now, it's still so powerful. An ordinary bright swordsman definitely wouldn't be able to easily escape from this array. Such a powerful array. If only I had an array diagram. Xiaohua thought this array was the same as the sword array from before. He thought he could escape after waiting a little longer. However, as the array's strength increased, the brilliance of the seal of turning the sea also gradually dimmed. The array didn't seem to have any signs of stopping. Damn it, Xiaohua cursed. He urged his magic and pointed at the seal of turning the sea. Rise. The seal of turning the sea let out a huge rumbling sound. It seemed to be rapidly expanding. However, as Xiaohua poured his magic power in, the surroundings of the seal of turning the sea didn't swirl up a hurricane. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth that Xiaohua expected also didn't suck in. Even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has actually been confined. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Helpless, he could only urge his magic power again. The true essence in his body surged, but the coiling dragon above the seal of turning the sea gradually came alive again. Roar, the coiling dragon circled around the seal, opened its mouth, and held the seal in its mouth. Then, like a flying dragon in the sky, the coiling dragon soared high into the sky. The seal also emitted an extremely powerful restrictive force and rushed towards the array. Rumble, an earth-shaking rumble rang out. The seal of ocean overturning seal collided with the sealing power of the formation, causing the space several kilometers in front of Xiaohua to tremble. Xiaohua's figure also swayed twice amidst the tremors. The enormous force pressed him down by more than 10 feet. Roar, the coiling dragon of the seal of turning the sea let out a mournful cry. As Xiaohua's magic power was slightly exhausted, the dragon's body flashed and was about to land on the seal of turning the sea. Rise, although Xiaohua was shocked that the array covered such a large area, he was even more delighted by the might of his seal of turning the sea. He roared again and urged his magic power. The coiling dragon once again charged towards the array, full of vigor. Buzz. A loud sound was heard. The brilliance of the seal of turning the sea slightly paused in midair. It was like a jade pillar holding up the sky that was collapsing. This young master wants to see, even without the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, whether or not the true essence in this young master's meridians can break through this so-called array. Xiaohua coldly snorted. The trace of primordial spirit in his meridians urged the dragonization art. Boundless true essence surged, and his magic power instantly rushed into the seal of turning the sea. One, the seal of ocean overturning seal suddenly expanded, and threads of jade began to condense in the surroundings. As the seal of ocean overturning seal flashed, the coiling dragon also gradually grew longer. Then the entire seal of ocean overturning seal seemed to be supported by a giant. It was both slow and indestructible as it charged into the array. Bang, the clear sound of water rang out. The array was broken by the seal of turning the sea. All of the restrictive force suddenly disappeared, and the rainwater once again poured down from above. Damn it, this is too anticlimactic. Xiaohua was obviously caught unprepared. The seal of turning the sea whistled and soared into the sky. The earthen yellow brilliance illuminated an area of several tens of zhang. Within this abandoned array, the ground was also covered in scarlet-red vegetation. Now that it was washed by the rain, the brilliance was transparent. However, that scarlet-red color was demonic. Chapter 2579. Xiaohua put away the seal of overturning the sea and flew for more than 10 li. Within the range of the array, there were no more changes. I'm afraid I can't rashly move forward anymore. Although Xiaohua's heroic spirit soared to the sky, in the face of the sword cultivators and the array set up by the Taoist sect for tens of thousands of years, he was also anxious in his heart. Let's wait until dawn tomorrow. The rain will stop, then we'll move forward. Thinking of this, Xiaohua looked around and scanned the area with his divine sense. He was about to descend and rest in a low-lying area. However, just as he was about to descend, his left arm suddenly shook. The light protecting his body was hit by a sharp force and instantly collapsed. Even his Taoist robe was torn apart. This is... Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly checked, but he didn't see anything special in the darkness. When Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense, he felt a 1-foot-long, scimitar-like existence emitting a strange fluctuation. Space crack. Xiaohua suddenly realized that he had already seen this kind of extremely powerful thing in the netherworld. He didn't expect to encounter it again just as he arrived at the center of the sword tomb. Xiaohua hurriedly opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. Sure enough, a gray brilliance stopped at his left arm. It was thin like a strand of hair. This sword tomb is too dangerous. Xiaohua couldn't help but groan again. He looked again and again with his Dharma eye before his figure landed. He clapped his hand and took out the rabbit talismans. He separately placed them on the snowfield. When Xiaohua grabbed with his hand and was about to activate the rabbit array, the jade slip in his arms suddenly vibrated and seemed to start to heat up, Huh? Xiao Hua was surprised. He stretched out his hand and took out the jade slip. He used a bit of magic power to activate it. The jade slip actually flew out a few feet and flew towards the north of the array 1,000 feet away. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly grabbed with his hand and took out the talismans that were placed on the snowfield. His figure shot forward and followed the jade slip. He saw the jade slip fly to a place a few feet higher than the snowfield. There was also a quan-shaped stone block there. However, these rocks were already damaged, and they were covered with scarlet plants. When Xiao Hua saw this, he did not hesitate to grab the rock. A layer of silver light appeared on the rock. This silver light was like mercury leaking to the ground, quickly falling from the top of the rock. A palm-sized square cauldron was revealed. However, the cauldron that was revealed this time was not in perfect condition. There were many flaws on its surface. Xiao Hua looked at it for a moment, then pointed with his finger. The jade slip once again fell into the small cauldron. With a loud bang, the jade slip transformed into a silver splash within the small cauldron. The splash seemed to have been sprayed into the air, then it transformed into a meteor that flew towards the extreme north. This meteor was extremely fast, seemingly even faster than an ordinary message talisman. While Xiao Hua was stunned, the meteor had already crossed over 1,000 feet. Just as Xiao Hua was about to urge his imperial thunder travel to chase after the shooting star, he stopped the rumbling of thunder. This jade slip is most likely a messaging talisman. Of course, this young master can catch up, but can an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator catch up? In the end, what kind of medicinal pill is Yu Tong selling in his gourd? Could it be he has no intention of harming this young master? Just a mere message talisman? But why wasn't it a message talisman just now, but 2 formations instead? Xiao Hua was somewhat unable to understand, but he was not anxious. Since the message talisman had already been sent out, it would be best if someone came. Even if no one came, he would continue to move forward. However, Xiao Hua thought for a moment, and his figure slowly changed. It was the image of the so-called Feng Ying from that day. It had already been more than 10 years. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's muddle-headed memories could actually still change. Moreover, Xiao Hua's own cultivation had also been suppressed to the early stage of foundation establishment. The Taoist robe on Xiao Hua's body naturally changed into an ordinary one. Then he took out an ordinary disc-shaped magic tool. The misty green brilliance merely blocked Xiao Hua's body. This was not out of Xiao Hua's expectations. After several hours, he saw that the east was already shining, and no one was coming to look for him. Seeing that the pouring rain did not have the slightest sign of stopping, Xiao Hua, who was quietly cultivating, opened his eyes. He pointed his finger, and the bronze plate fell into his hand. Xiao Hua was about to transform again. At this moment, the quan-shaped stone in front of him suddenly emitted a faint silver light. Oh! Xiao Hua hastily stood still. He flew slightly away from the stone and coldly looked at it. The silver light once again covered the entire stone. However, this time, the stone had transformed into an oval shape, and a broken mirror was revealed from the oval. What a brilliant message talisman technique! Seeing this, Xiao Hua immediately thought, if this technique was used in a battle between Dao cultivators, why would the disciple on duty personally send the message? Even a lot of battle reports would be lost because of this. Emotions gradually appeared on the broken mirror. An old man whose face could not be seen clearly revealed his astonished face. When he saw Xiao Hua, he immediately scolded, "How many times did this old man say it? Wu Jia Zigui was no longer in use before the new year. Why are you still running there?" Xiao Hua's eyes turned. He hastily bowed and said, "All right, teacher brother knows that this disciple did not receive the notice. This disciple only followed the jade slip that junior brother you gave me and headed to this place." The old man coldly snorted, "Whether or not you received the notice has nothing to do with this old man. You go and find your junior brother Yu to settle the score. The route of Wu Jia Zigui is now covered with broken sword formations and spell formations. There are also many spatial cracks. Do you want this old man to send someone to pick you up? If you want to die, don't drag this old man down. It's now covered? Xiao Hua understood. He was shocked. Could it be that the broken sword formations and spell formations can also change? Senior brother, Xiao Hua hastily shouted, this disciple came here with great difficulty. How do you want this disciple to return? Just now, this disciple was lucky to escape from the sword formation. If not for these raindrops, this disciple would have already died in the sword formation. Where's your junior brother you? Which one is he? Why didn't he bring you here? The old man coldly asked. He did not answer Xiao Hua's question. Junior brother you? Naturally it's junior brother Yu Tong. Xiao Hua blinked his eyes and said probingly, he has some matters to attend to and let this disciple go first. I'm afraid that he will come later. This disciple? Could it be that this disciple came too late? At this moment, the silver mirror faintly flickered. The brilliance was somewhat dim. Yudong. When the old man heard this, he seemed to be deep in thought. Soon after, he smiled and said, not late, not late. It's never late. Immediately after, on the mirror, the old man's figure flickered extremely. His voice was also unclear. Senior brother? Xiao Hua was somewhat anxious. Just as he was about to shout, the old man appeared again. This old man will pass. It was these 3 words that caused the mirror to vanish. However, the silver oval was still visible, but the silver light was also gradually fading away. What does this old man want to pass on? Xiao Hua waited until this so-called Wu Jia Zigui had been abolished. When the silver light faded away, this place would no longer have anything special. He wanted to find Yu Tong to vent his anger. Even the idea of finding trouble with Huan Hua Pai would also fall through. That's right, Yudong? This old man seemed to have mistaken Yu Tong for Yudong, and he hesitated for a moment. Could it be that there are many people with the surname Yu in the Huan Hua sect? Is Yudong Yu Tong's senior brother? Moreover, the sword formations and formations within the sword catacomb can actually change. This is even more unexpected. If it weren't for the old man from the Huan Hua sect, I would still be courting death with this useless jade slip in the sword catacomb. But then again, what is the Huan Hua sect doing in the sword tomb? Xiao Hua's eyes turned slightly as he quickly thought about what he had just seen. Clearly, the Huan Hua sect has some tricks up their sleeves in this sword tomb. Moreover, this arrangement had already started long before the sword Dao battle. This has nothing to do with the sword Dao battle. Fairy Hong Xia is already a disciple in the late stage of foundation establishment, and seems to be very favored by the sect leader of the Huan Hua sect. This young master has never heard her talk about the arrangement of the Huan Hua sect in the sword tomb. This place must be very secretive. If this young master discovered this secret, would he offend the sect leader of the Huan Hua sect? Then, this young master and Fairy Hong Xia's dual cultivation will be a problem? Hee, what are you thinking? This young master is now Feng Ying. Could it be that the Huan Hua sect leader is also in the sword tomb? Xiao Hua immediately laughed sinisterly. That guy Yun Jiaying is also here. This young master will go and take a look first. As Xiao Hua thought about it, the oval slowly shrank, and the silver color was about to completely disappear. Presumably, when the silver color disappeared, the oval would turn back into an ordinary stone. At this moment, like the jade slip that Xiao Hua sent out, another silver light flashed like a meteor and disappeared into the oval. It was the same jade slip that Xiao Hua sent out earlier. It seems that even the heavens want me to go. Xiao Hua reached out with a smile and took out the jade slip. He immersed his divine sense into it, and indeed, it recorded the location of the other Zigui. Xiao Hua flew up and looked at it carefully. After identifying the direction, he opened his left hand and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. His figure slowly flew, and according to the guidance of the jade slip, he flew towards the northwest direction. After Xiao Hua flew away, the silver color of the first Jia Zigui completely disappeared, and it returned to its previous stone shape. At this time, the stones seemed to have been eroded over the years. Not only were there many small holes on the surface like a honeycomb, after being washed by the rain, the stone gradually turned into powder. It seemed that the inside was also decayed. As the rain flowed, the clear water covered the ground of the sword tomb. All the dust seeped into the ground and gradually disappeared. Not to mention Xiaohua coming here again, even if the jade slip that he spoke of came again, there would not be any trace of it. Rumble. With a series of loud noises, Xiaohua used the seal of ocean overturning seal to shatter the numerous sword intents that were as powerful as mountains and rivers. His figure was like a flood dragon as he soared through the sky. Damn it, this is too powerful. Xiaohua's figure had just left the sword formation when he cried out in astonishment. Chapter 2580. Yes, although Xiaohua is only at the late stage of foundation establishment, his strength is comparable to the late stage of gold core. Even with his strength, he suffered so much in the sword tomb. What about others? If they haven't reached the nascent soul realm and don't have the strength to transform into a sword, I'm afraid they can't come and go freely, right? No wonder those gold core cultivators in the conference hall didn't have any ideas about the sword tomb. This is indeed not a place for people to stay. Presumably, sword cultivators won't do anything here. Xiaohua pointed at the seal of ocean overturning, and a faint earthen yellow radiance protected him. Then he took out the jade slip and carefully looked at it. After that, he scratched his head and flew up with slight hesitation. However, it wasn't long before a few more rays of sword light suddenly appeared. No, this young master went the wrong way again. Xiaohua saw the familiar sword array and immediately realized. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, wanting to escape. However, it was already too late. The sword lights had already enveloped his body. After searching for more than an hour, Xiaohua finally arrived in front of another pile of stones that formed the word, complete. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed and looked around. I don't know when this young master's road finding ability will improve. Clearly, this young master can find a path, but this young master has to take a detour. But it feels like flying straight like this is fine, but the actual route is a detour. Forget it. This young master is afraid of this kind of fate. Being able to find this place is already not bad. Immediately, Xiaohua activated the Zigui and threw the jade slip into it. The silver light on the Zigui flashed, but the jade slip didn't fly away. It only quietly floated in the small cauldron. It seemed that only with this jade slip here could the Zigui's silver light spread out like a wave. After the time it takes to finish a meal, a figure appeared in midair in the northwest. It was impossible to see who it was, but when Xiaohua got closer, he couldn't help but chuckle. This was a mid-foundation establishment cultivator. His hair was grizzled, his face was thin, and his chin was sharp. A few strands of sparse but long beard floated above his chin. The cultivator's eyes were sharp, and he seemed to be on high alert. He looked Xiaohua up and down from a distance and even looked him over. Xiaohua laughed inwardly, but as soon as he saw who it was, he immediately retracted his Buddhist sense. He absolutely couldn't let this person discover anything unusual. That mesmerized cultivator sized up Xiaohua from head to toe in a somewhat strange manner. Disciple Feng in greets, senior brother. Xiaohua also pretended to hesitate and bowed. Senior brother? That cultivator was a little strange. His body slightly floated back and he asked curiously, which family's disciple are you? Which sect? Xiaohua was just as stunned as that cultivator. This disciple is naturally a disciple of the Huanhua sect. Could it be? Senior brother isn't? That cultivator muttered to himself for a moment, then grabbed the jade slip from the Zigui with his hand. He immersed his divine sense into it and asked in a low voice, "Who told you to come here? Is this your jade slip?" Seeing the cultivator ask so many questions, Xiaohua's heart thumped. His eyes turned slightly and he said with a smile, "This disciple was told to come here by senior brother Yudong. This jade slip wasn't given to this disciple by senior brother Yudong. That jade slip was just taken away by a senior brother at Wu Jia Zigui." Oh, so it was a disciple recommended by Yudong. Although that cultivator's voice was somewhat distorted through the mesmerizing robe, the relief in his voice was clear. It's no wonder you went to Wu Jia Zigue. That place was already abandoned before the end of the year. If you had arrived a few days later, even if you had the jade slip in your hand, you wouldn't have been able to find this place. However, you actually being able to come here from Wu Jia Zigue greatly exceeded this old man's expectations. Yes, this disciple heard what that senior brother said earlier, and I've been pondering in my heart. However, senior brother, this disciple flew here just like that. Although I encountered some sword formations, they were all broken. Although this disciple was scared out of his wits, they weren't really able to injure this disciple. Is there something wrong? Xiao Hua took the initiative to strike first, and hurriedly asked, "Do you want to examine this disciple's command token?" Hehe, since it was recommended by Yudong, then it's no big deal. The cultivator smiled, then tossed the jade slip to Xiao Hua and said, "There's no need to examine it. This jade slip is even more useful than a command token." "Oh, so that's how it is." Xiao Hua's hand that was pretending to reach into his bosom stopped, and he took the jade slip with a flip of his hand. He nodded and said, "It seems that senior brother Yudong also said the same thing at that time." The rinsing flower sex command token can only verify one's identity. Can it also raise your realm? The cultivator sneered. You were able to obtain this minor stone command token. That's your luck in this lifetime. Minor stone command token? Xiao Hua was somewhat dumbfounded, and he thought to himself, isn't this just a summoning talisman? When did it become a minor stone command token? Minor stone, is it these stones? While thinking, Xiao Hua's gaze swept over the pile of stones. At this time, the pile of stones no longer had the silver brilliance, and they were still the same stones as before. That cultivator clearly saw Xiao Hua's gaze, and seemed to see through Xiao Hua's thoughts. He pointed with his hand and said, "Look at these stones, they're just stubborn stones, but in my hands I can minor stone command token them into gold. You can be considered lucky to actually be acquainted with Yudong. In the future, you'll be a golden stone. When your cultivation is successful, you'll have to thank Yudong." Yes, this disciple understands. Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he bowed and said, "This disciple will definitely remember senior brother Yu's kindness in my heart. All right, follow this old man." The cultivator spoke for a long time, but he didn't mention his own name, nor did he say whether or not he was a disciple of the Huanhua sect. With a wave of his hand, he took the lead and flew towards the place where he came from. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent, and he also roused his spirit. Using the speed of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, he slowly chased after that cultivator. Sure enough, after flying for a while with the cultivator, Xiao Hua understood why the cultivator didn't encounter sword formations and magic formations, and why he frequently encountered them. That cultivator's flight path wasn't a straight line at all. Sometimes it was curved, sometimes it was bent, and sometimes it was even slanted. It seemed that in this cultivator's eyes, this sword tomb was a maze, and he came and went very freely. At first, Xiao Hua was still thinking about memorizing the route, but after flying for half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua gave up like before. It was because that cultivator's flight path was extremely irregular, and there wasn't anything nearby that could be used as a reference, so Xiao Hua really didn't know how to memorize it. He flew straight for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, and during this time, he didn't encounter any magic formations or sword formations. He didn't even come across a single spatial crack, causing Xiao Hua to be endlessly envious. When he thought about how he came here from Jiazigui, he couldn't help but blush with shame in his heart. About 10 feet in front of him, there was another pile of stones, and it wasn't any different from before. If it was the same as before, Xiao Hua would have definitely flown over, but this old man stopped in midair and didn't move forward. Xiao Hua knew that something was wrong, so he cautiously followed behind him, quietly observing the situation. Sure enough, the old man clapped his hand and took out a silvery white triangular object. He slightly activated his magic power, and that object suddenly trembled and flew above the pile of stones. As the object trembled, a trembling, intermittent silver light flowed out from the pile of rocks and slowly, almost with some difficulty, submerged the entire pile of rocks. The moment the entire pile of rocks completely turned silver, the area around the pile of rocks in a radius of 10 feet, which was right in front of the old man, boiled like boiling water. The entire space was filled with silver bubbles. These bubbles contained a great amount of power, and the direction of each bubble was different. Xiaohua looked at this unforeseen event with some shock. He knew that if an ordinary cultivator suddenly barged in, just by relying on this strange change, the cultivator's body would be torn to shreds. The boiling water continued for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn before it slowly receded. Once the space became clear again, the old man once again pointed with his hand. The three-rhombus-shaped object from before rose slightly, following which, it transformed into a spear-like brilliance that pierced into a spot a few feet to the left of the rock. Puchi! Xiaohua clearly heard what seemed to be the sound of silk being torn apart. The space was pierced by the spear of light, and an unfathomably deep hole several feet in size appeared on the ground. Damn it, I have to become a spirit-seeking mouse again. Xiaohua sighed. He knew that the secret of the Huanhua sect was hidden under the ground of the sword tomb, so he couldn't help but complain. Of course, Xiaohua knew how to escape through the earth, so the secret of the Huanhua sect being hidden underground was extremely beneficial to him. However, when he thought about how every time he encountered a problem, he had to solve it underground, so Xiaohua felt a bit bored. Junior Marshal Brother Feng, please? The old man didn't move. He turned around and raised his hand, indicating for Xiaohua to enter the cave first. All right. Xiaohua knew that the old man was still worried about him, so he didn't hesitate and responded in a low voice. His figure flew to the entrance of the cave, and he released a bit of his Buddhist sense before flying into the cave. When Xiaohua's figure entered the cave, the old man looked left and right. His divine sense also swept the area twice before he felt relieved and landed inside the cave. Just as Xiaohua's figure landed inside the cave, a very strange suction force appeared from inside the cave. It was as if the suction force had grown a hand, and it pulled him into the depths of the cave. Xiaohua muttered to himself, but he didn't reject this force. His eyes were filled with silver light, as if this deep cave was formed by the silver brilliance. Xiaohua released his divine sense slightly, and within that silver brilliance, there was actually a sharp point, causing Xiaohua's divine sense to feel a slight pain. Without a doubt, this place is filled with gold attribute heaven and earth spirit chi. This deep cave is also formed by gold attribute heaven and earth spirit chi. Xiaohua thought to himself, and the magic power in his body slightly condensed to deal with any possible accidents. Sure enough, when Xiaohua landed about 10 zhang down, the pulling force actually increased, and the direction also changed, as if it wanted to clench its fists. Following that, the surrounding silver light became even more intense, and that kind of sharp cutting force penetrated through the brilliance, directly piercing into Xiaohua's skin. Naturally, Xiaohua's protective golden light was about to be activated. Chapter 2581. Io, could it be that you're testing this young master's cultivation? Xiaohua slightly wrinkled his brows and forcefully restrained his magic power. While he was at it, he took out a yellow protective talisman that he hadn't used for a long time and placed it on his body with his magic power. As soon as the yellow talisman was activated, its brilliance flickered. It seemed that the brilliance in the passage was extremely powerful and was constantly attacking the protective talisman. Junior Marshal Brother Feng, don't worry. The old man's voice floated over Xiaohua's head. This is the special feature of the restriction here. As long as you don't pay attention to it, it won't harm you. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiaohua respectfully said. This disciple only instinctively wants to protect himself. As he spoke, Xiaohua slapped his hand and the yellow protective talisman fell off. Without the yellow protective talisman's brilliance, the brilliance in the passage was still piercing. However, as the old man said, it didn't seem to be able to penetrate his skin. Just as Xiaohua was about to send a voice transmission to the old man, he heard a slight rumbling sound. The passage around 1 zhang to his left suddenly began to shake. The silver light that previously wrapped around Xiaohua also began to shrink. Before Xiaohua could show any surprise, bubbles that were 3 times bigger than Xiaohua's body appeared within the silver brilliance. Pop, 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 these bubbles burst one after another. Xiaohua felt his entire body become light, as if he was floating in the air but also falling down. Everything in front of him became blurry and the silver brilliance violently shook. The feeling of floating in the air only lasted for a few seconds before a heavy pressure fell on Xiaohua's shoulder. Teleport. Xiaohua was very familiar with this feeling. He immediately understood that there was actually a short-distance teleportation formation in this passage. The silver brilliance had just been replaced by a gray-white brilliance when Xiaohua felt his body become light again. His figure appeared in a small triangular room. Xiaohua slightly focused his eyes and looked around. He saw that this small room was only a few chi in size and could only accommodate 3 to 5 people. The surrounding walls were the same as the passage from before. They were all silver-white. However, this silver-white luster was floating on the walls and wasn't dazzling. And now, there were already 2 middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators standing in this small room. These 2 cultivators were both middle-aged, each holding a flying sword in their hands. The flying swords were overflowing with sword light, and at this moment, they were pressing against Xiaohua's ribs. "Who are you? Where is your stone tablet?" The 2 of them didn't wait for Xiaohua to come back to his senses as they asked coldly. "Disciple is Feng Ying, sent over by senior brother Yu Dong." Xiaohua's expression was slightly flustered as he hurriedly replied. "Your stone medallion." The 2 of them didn't seem to slack off and continued to ask. In this disciple's embrace." Xiaohua cautiously pointed at his own chest and said in a low voice, "This disciple will give it to the 2 senior brothers." A cold snort came from his nose, and the 2 flying swords moved forward a bit, fearing that Xiaohua would do something strange. When Xiaohua took out the jade slip, a cultivator took it and scanned it with his divine sense. His expression changed greatly as he berated, "This is senior martial brother Yu Bing's stone touch token. When did it become Yudong's? Who the hell are you?" When Xiaohua heard this, his brows furrowed. Previously, he used the jade slip from over 10 years ago to deceive the so-called Yu Bing, and then he used half-truths to deceive the confused old man just now. He originally thought that he had passed, but he didn't expect that after being transported to this place, he would be exposed by someone. Unconsciously, he became even more suspicious. This inspection is so strict. What secret does this Huanhua sect have? This stone tablet gold really can increase the cultivation of Huanhua sect disciples? Thinking of this, Xiaohua bitterly smiled. Disciple is naturally Feng Ying's. Disciple heard from junior martial brother Yu Dong that this place can increase disciples' cultivation, so disciple came here according to his jade slip. Just now, in the sword tomb, when junior martial brother Yu Dong sent out the jade slip, it didn't come back. This jade slip was senior martial brother Yu Bing sent it to disciple again. This situation, disciple already clearly explained it to a senior martial brother dressed in a confused robe. If the 2 senior martial brothers don't believe me, feel free to ask that senior martial brother. Xiaohua actually had Feng Yi's keepsake in his space, but that was also Feng Yi's, not Feng Ying's. Seeing the 2 cultivators so strict, Xiaohua didn't dare to rashly take it out. Hearing Xiaohua's reply, the 2 were clearly somewhat hesitant. They glanced at each other, and one of the cultivators coldly said, "Take out your keepsake and take a look." This. Xiaohua was somewhat helpless. His eyes slightly narrowed, and he immediately released his Buddhist sense. Who would have thought that the 4 walls of the small room were ice cold, just like ice? His Buddhist sense simply couldn't penetrate, and he couldn't see what was outside the small room. He also couldn't determine whether or not the 2 people he killed wouldn't be discovered by bystanders. "Quickly take it out!" The other cultivator loudly shouted, and the flying sword in his hand once again extended toward Xiaohua's ribs, already touching Xiaohua's Taoist robe. "Here!" Xiaohua clapped his hand, and Feng Yi's keepsake was taken out. However, Xiaohua was still somewhat hesitant, and unhappily handed it over. "You take a look." The cultivator who used the flying sword to threaten Xiaohua's waist ordered the other person. That person extended his hand and was about to take the keepsake from Xiao Hua's hand. With a "thu" sound, a small door about the height of a person opened behind the cultivator, and a somewhat hoarse voice sounded, "Feng Ying." The person who came was the old man dressed in camouflage, but at this moment, the old man had already removed the camouflage and revealed his true appearance. Of course, when he saw the situation inside the small room, his face became somewhat unsightly. I was wondering why this junior Marshall brother Feng didn't come out for a long time. So it was the two junior Marshall brothers who were making things difficult for him. The old man coldly snorted and said, "This Feng Ying was sent by Yudong, and at the same time, senior Marshall brother Yubing also let him go. Why you guys interrogating him like this? Do you think this old man's interrogation wasn't detailed enough? You want to find clues from Feng Ying's body?" Senior Marshall brother Yu Ping. The face of the cultivator who originally wanted the keepsake also became somewhat unsightly. He retracted his hand and cupped his hands. "This is the duty of us two brothers. Please forgive us, senior Marshall brother." "Your duty is naturally yours," Yu Ping coldly said, "but this old man brought him in. If there was a problem, how could this old man not know?" According to this old man's knowledge, in these past few years, Yudong didn't send many talents here, and he was already scolded by the sect master. Today, he sent junior Marshall brother Feng Ying here with great difficulty, and he's even a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. You guys are interrogating him like this. Are you dissatisfied with this old man, or with senior Marshall brother Yubing? Senior Marshall brother Yu Ping. The other disciple glanced at Xiao Hua, wanting to say something, but hesitated, and also put away the flying sword in his hand. "What? You have nothing to say?" Yu Ping was unwilling to let go. This old man recommended a few disciples 2 years ago, and when they just arrived here, they were made difficult by you guys. They couldn't stand it, and gave up such a good opportunity to turn stone into gold, turned around and left. Did you guys receive Yu Hua's instructions, and insist on opposing senior Marshall brother Yubing? Senior Marshall brother. The two people's faces were unsightly, and they transmitted in a low voice. "We already said just now, this is our duty. Turning stone into gold is an extremely secretive matter, and it's of great importance. Cultivators who aren't closely related to our Yu family absolutely can't participate, and any cultivators with the slightest trace of abnormality can't enter." Senior Marshall brother speaking so much in front of outsiders, aren't you afraid of being punished by Lord Sect Master? Punished? Haven't we been punished enough? Hearing the word, punished, the old man became even more furious, but he didn't forget the middle-aged cultivator's reminder, and transmitted in a voice transmission, "Yudong's mouth is clumsy, and he hasn't recommended any cultivators here for 2 years. If he still can't complete the task this year, you naturally understand his situation. This disciple is an early foundation establishment disciple of the cleansing flower sect, and his cultivation seems to be pretty good. Yudong must have spent a lot of effort. Just now, he took the initiative to take out his token for this old man to examine, but this old man didn't look carefully. So what if there's something wrong with him? My Yu family's turning stone into gold plan has been going on for more than 10 years, and there hasn't been any problems. What kind of big waves can this little early foundation establishment cultivator cause? Besides, isn't the token in his hand the cleansing flower sect? This old man has seen it more than once or twice. Can't you see it too? Speaking up to here, the two middle-aged cultivators' gazes involuntarily fell on the token in Xiao Hua's hand. Seeing the three suddenly transmitting their voices, Xiao Hua's heart jumped, and seeing the three of them looking at the token in his hand, Xiao Hua inwardly cried out in alarm. Presumably, senior Marshall brother Yubing also saw through Yudong's situation, so he took the initiative to give his stone marking token to Feng Ying. Yu Ping shifted his gaze away from the token in Xiao Hua's hand and transmitted his voice again. "This old man will say it here, you can check it as you wish. The matter of Yu Bing and Yu Hua isn't something you and I should get involved in. Previously, you all drove away the disciple this old man chose, and this old man will slowly find an opportunity to settle accounts with you all in the future. This disciple, if you still want to send him back, then do it as soon as possible." Saying this, Yu Ping no longer spoke and turned to leave the room. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping. The cultivator on the left said with a smile, "This disciple's token is not bad, it's indeed a disciple of the cleansing flower sect, how can this one not let him pass? As for what Senior Marshal Brother said just now, it's actually false. This token naturally belongs to the cleansing flower sect, but this person may not be a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. This old man has never guaranteed that he is a disciple of the cleansing flower sect. If you don't check it carefully and something happens, don't drag this old man into it." Yu Ping said with a cold smile, completely ungrateful. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping already let him in, what could possibly happen? The other cultivator also hurriedly said with a smile, "Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping is also a senior marshal brother that we all respect, we definitely don't have the intentions that Senior Marshal Brother said just now." Xiao Hua's suspended heart relaxed again. From a bystander's point of view, he could already see that some people seemed to have found a gap in the struggle between them, an opportunity where others wouldn't check the token in his hand. Chapter 2582. Senior Marshal Brothers, this token. Xiao Hua loosened the reins only to grasp them better and raised his token. "Put it away." The two cultivators didn't have much coldness on their faces, as if they were really afraid that if Xiao Hua turned around, they would offend that Yu Ping. "Feng, come with me." Yu Ping coldly snorted, waved his hand, and walked out of the room first. "Yes, disciple understands." Xiao Hua hurriedly put away the token, cupped his hands towards the two cultivators, and quickly chased after them. This senior marshal brother Yu Ping is really something. After the two left, the two cultivators also sat cross-legged on the ground. The one on the left complained, what kind of cultivators did he find before? Two loose cultivators, one chi refinement cultivator, with the head of a snake and the eyes of a rat, almost the same as him. They didn't meet the sect master's requirements at all, what's wrong with us blocking them? He, on the other hand, was unconsciously vigilant, and even pushed the responsibility to us. What is this? What does the matter of Yu Ping and Yu Hua have to do with us? Forget it, let him be. The other cultivator coldly said, "This Feng, it doesn't seem inappropriate, even if it is inappropriate, so what? There are tens of thousands of cultivators who participate in the Midas Touch. Have you ever heard of any of them?" He himself is well aware that we didn't check his origin, we only checked his cultivation and aptitude. The cultivator still didn't let it go. He was originally using this as an excuse to stir up trouble. That might not be the case. The other cultivator indifferently said, "Yu Dong is favored by Yu Ping. Yu Dong's cultivation is good, but he's a man of few words. How many cultivators did he send over these years? He couldn't fulfill the sect master's requirements, and Yu Ping's face was also unsightly. No wonder Yu Ping was a bit impatient. Isn't that right? 9,000 cultivators, ah?" The cultivator's face showed a trace of exaggeration. "Sure." The other cultivator hurriedly put his finger to his mouth and anxiously said, "Do you want to die? This kind of thing, how can you casually say it?" Yes, little brother was wrong. The cultivator's heart also trembled, and he hurriedly shut his mouth. How could Xiao Hua know so many secrets? He didn't know that the other party had gone easy on him, and he was still proud of his cleverness. However, he also sensed that something was wrong. This place doesn't seem to be the disciples of the Huanhua sect. What? Are they all surnamed Yu? Xiao Hua immediately thought of what Zhong Haoren had said. Could it be that this is the Yu family of the Fallen Gold Mountain? Falling Gold Mountain? Turning stone into gold? What does this have to do with Huanhua sect? Based on the surname Yu, Yu Tong must be a disciple of Falling Gold Mountain. He could enter the Huanhua sect by cheating, so he must have colluded with the Huanhua sect. Moreover, from the fact that Yu Tong was holding the master's token that year, the Huanhua sect is also connected to Falling Gold Mountain. Maybe Falling Gold Mountain is a cultivation family controlled by the Huanhua sect? Xiao Hua thought as he followed Yu Ping out of the small house. When he saw the situation outside the small house, he was even more shocked. In front of him was a huge space. There were countless buildings in this space, and these buildings were completely different from what Xiaohua had seen before. The buildings in the past were usually carved beams and painted pillars, and had an antique flavor. Even the buildings in the Sky Patrol City were made of huge stones. Although they were rare, they were not particularly rare. The buildings in front of him were all emitting a silver luster, as if all the buildings were plated with a layer of silver light. Even though they looked like pavilions, the light gave people the illusion that these pavilions were large celestial devices. Moreover, there were many such pavilions, huts, and passageways. They were all connected to each other, as if the entire space was a huge celestial device. The heaven and earth spiritual energy of the metal attribute is indeed dense. Xiaohua thought to himself. But what is the purpose of the Huanhua sect or Falling Gold Mountain to set up such a huge formation? This is the Sword Tomb. Xiaohua's astonished gaze moved away from the surrounding buildings, and he looked at the wall beside him. He could not help but stretch out his hand and touch it with his finger. A cold and smooth feeling came from the silver wall, and it was no different from a magical tool that was refined on a daily basis. Yu Ping seemed to have noticed Xiaohua's action, but he revealed a smile and did not stop him. Outside the small house was a rather large plaza, and the silver floor was incomparably smooth. One could almost see the reflections of people on it. There were not many cultivators walking around the plaza, but when they saw Yu Ping, they nodded slightly or bowed to him, as though they were very familiar with him. In fact, when these disciples saw Xiaohua, they also nodded slightly, making him feel very warm. I wonder how much Yudong has told you. After leading Xiaohua into this place, Yu Ping said with a smile, however, this old man does not wish to explain too much to you. Just like what this old man said, being able to participate in my Yu family's Midas touch is definitely the best choice you've made in your life. Yes, Xiaohua looked around and smiled apologetically. Even if this little one had some doubts previously, after seeing this place, this little one has no more doubts. It is just that, this little one did not expect that junior brother you did not say clearly that this place is actually the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. Hayes, you also know that Yudong's words are not good. He was afraid that you misunderstood, so he only said your Huanhua sect. However, the relationship between your Huanhua sect and my Fallen Gold Mountain, I believe, you should also know about it. Yu Ping sighed as though he was explaining something. Of course, the more he explained, the more Xiaohua was confused. Xiaohua didn't answer and only laughed foolishly. Yu Ping saw this silly laugh and actually thought that Xiaohua had understood his meaning. He said, since Yudong introduced you to me, he must have trusted you. Just now, this old man was risking my face to keep you here because I didn't want those two disciples who didn't know when to back down to ruin Yudong's good intentions for you. Wait until your cultivation level increases. As he said that, Yu Ping's face turned cold. Although you do not need to be loyal to my Yu family like the disciples of my Fallen Gold Mountain, as long as my Yu family has any matters, you must do your best and not slack off in the slightest. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiaohua acted very well. However, this matter must not harm the interests of my sect. If not, this disciple will not participate in this Shiqing Jin sect and return to the Huanhua sect. Junior brother Feng, you are thinking too much. Yu Ping laughed. When has my Fallen Gold Mountain ever harmed the interests of the Huanhua sect? If there is such a day, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? Yu Ping and Xiaohua walked to a corner, and a hoarse voice sounded from the side of the silver wall that Xiaohua could not see. Senior brother Yu Hua. Yu Ping seemed to be extremely familiar with this voice and was even more afraid. Hearing this voice, he immediately shrunk his neck and stood there respectfully, quietly waiting for this senior brother named Yu Hua to appear. This is... Xiaohua also seemed to be familiar with this voice, and the corner of his mouth rose slightly, and a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, when that senior brother Yu Hua turned around the corner, wasn't it a white-clothed old man with a slightly green face and a brandy nose who was in the late foundation establishment stage? Wasn't it the person who snatched the robin that Xiaohua had already caught and gave it to Yu Tong when Xiaohua was participating in the disciple selection in the Hua sect? That Yu Hua was indeed overbearing, and upon seeing Yu Ping, he coldly snorted, "How do you know that my fallen gold mountain will harm the interests of the Hua sect?" "Good, senior brother knows." Yu Ping hurriedly smiled. "This little brother is only assuming. This little brother is also clear in his heart that my fallen gold mountain and the Hua sect are bound together, so how could we do anything that would harm the Hua sect?" "What do you mean by bound together?" Yu Hua glanced at Yu Ping and laughed. "Fallen gold mountain is fallen gold mountain, and the Hua sect is the Hua sect. One is a cultivation family, and the other is a cultivation sect. Even if there are some interests involved, it is only a temporary cooperation. What are you talking about bound together? It is truly laughable. If this was known by the Hua sect, wouldn't they laugh their heads off?" Yes, this little brother naturally understands." Yu Ping was not angry at all and still lowered his head and smiled apologetically. "The Hua sect is a towering tree, and fallen gold mountain is only a small blade of grass under the tree. We are the stalks above the grass, and to be able to enjoy the shade under the big tree, we have to thank the Hua sect. We also have to thank senior brother Yu Hua, this meritorious disciple who is negotiating with the Hua sect for the sake of fallen gold mountain. And it's good that you know." Yu Hua glanced at Xiaohua. "Don't speak nonsense for no reason. If other people were to hear it, who knows what it would be like. You have to remember, trouble comes from the mouth. This is the disciple that was just selected?" Yu Ping finally let out a breath and hurriedly laughed. "This is also a disciple of the Hua sect. This disciple feels that his foundation is quite good." A disciple of the Hua sect? The corner of Yu Hua's eye twitched, as if he was interested in Xiaohua. "Bad," Xiaohua secretly complained, but he could only brace himself and step forward, bowing. "This disciple greets senior brother." "No need to call me senior brother. This old man is not a disciple of the Hua sect. It's just that I am extremely familiar with many of the Hua sect's elders." Yu Hua opened his mouth to ask, but seemed to have thought of something and waved his hand. "Forget it, no matter which fellow's disciple you are, since you are here, you are the beneficiary of the Midas touch. I believe Yu Ping has already told you. Do your best, young man. The Hua sect will be your world in the future." Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple is endlessly grateful to senior brother and the others. Xiaohua hurriedly smiled apologetically. "It's good that you know." Yu Hua glanced at Xiaohua and no longer asked about Xiaohua's origin and walked away. When he walked past Xiaohua and Yu Ping, the ridicule at the corner of his mouth involuntarily appeared, and he did not hide it at all. Chapter 2583. Yu Ping didn't dare to move. Seeing Yu Hua cross half of the square and enter a corridor, he curled his lips and coldly snorted. He seemed to be muttering in a low voice. What's so great about him? He was a middle foundation establishment stage cultivator like me, but he did something for my falling gold mountain. That's why he benefited. He was promoted to an elder, but now he doesn't put falling gold mountain in his eyes. He keeps talking about Hua sect as if he's a disciple of Hua sect. Doesn't he know his surname is Yu? Xiaohua lowered his head and didn't look at Yu Ping. He only pricked up his ears. At this time, he already understood that this Yu Hua was a disciple of Falling Gold Mountain. When Yu Tong entered Hua sect, it was this guy who did something for Falling Gold Mountain. Of course, whether this matter was what Yu Ping said was unknown. But Xiaohua understood that this Yu Hua who had some relationship with Hua sect seemed to be at odds with Yu Bing who he saw in the mirror. Yes, one is Yu Bing, the other is Yu Hua. They were just born, and their parents were already trying to make them at odds. Xiaohua laughed in his heart, but then he muttered, there seems to be something strange. If it's a cultivator who has a good relationship with Hua sect, it's reasonable to ask a few questions when they see a junior, such as whose disciple they are, how their master and elders are doing, and so on. Especially the Midas touch, which helps people improve their cultivation. Wouldn't Falling Gold Mountain want to sell it? Strange, strange. Yu Ping muttered a few words. Seeing that Xiaohua was still obediently lowering his head, he wasn't in a good mood to explain anything to Xiaohua. At this time, Xiaohua whispered, "Senior Martial Brother, isn't this Senior Martial Brother Yu Hua a disciple of my Huanhua sect? He wants to." Yu Ping coldly said, "But Huanhua sect doesn't want him. Now he's an elder of Falling Gold Mountain, how can he enter Huanhua sect?" Then he ignored Xiaohua and left first. Xiaohua suppressed the doubts in his heart and followed him into a corridor. This corridor looked very strange. It wasn't straight, but rather tangled and complicated, like a spider web. Yu Ping led Xiaohua into the corridor, and after walking for another half a cigarette, they arrived at a smooth wall. He patted his hand and took out a token. Activating his magic power, the token flashed with the same silver brilliance as the wall. Pa? Yu Ping pressed the token against the wall. Once the token and the wall came into contact, it immediately let out a low sword hum, and the area around 10 feet around them began to shake. "Feng Ying, place your stone medallion on top," Yu Ping instructed. "Yes." Xiaohua responded. He didn't circulate his magic power and placed the jade slip in front of him. Woo! A suction force came from the place where the jade slip came in contact with the wall, firmly sucking the jade slip to the wall. Immediately after, Xiaohua felt the jade slip emitting heat. "Let go," Yu Ping said. Shua. Following Xiaohua's release, the jade slip instantly melted, turning into a ball of jade liquid that spread out on the wall. Then, it began to spin from the inside out. When the jade liquid seemed to spin into a rune, the jade liquid went deep into the wall that seemed abnormally hard. At the same time, a rune similar to the jade liquid flashed on the wall and disappeared. A small door about the height of a person appeared in the wall. Xiaohua's gaze swept over it. Inside, there was a small triangular room that was similar to the one he came in from. "Junior Brother Feng." Yu Ping introduced his medallion, then took out a small jade slip and handed it to Xiaohua. He smiled and said, "Originally, I should have brought you around here to see the other senior brothers of the Huanhua sect and Fallen Gold Mountain. However, time is running out and you've come a bit late. Junior brother should also be clear that although this is a fast method, there is also a price to pay. Not to mention the pain of the physical body, there will also be problems in the meridians and other places. The most important thing is that junior brother still has to cooperate with this bitter chew method. This is a secret method that my Fallen Gold Mountain created by combining the methods commonly used by the disciples of the Huanhua sect. Junior brother still needs to look at it. When the time comes, if you can't follow the instructions of the secret method and guide the innate gold chi into your meridians and transform it into your own true essence, not only will this opportunity be gone with the wind, even your own cultivation will have the possibility of all your previous efforts being wasted. Is it that serious? Xiaohua hurriedly asked. Seems junior brother Yu Dong didn't mention it. Yu Ping said with some displeasure. Without any risk, you can easily advance from the early stage of foundation establishment to the middle stage of foundation establishment or even the late stage of foundation establishment. How can there be such a cheap thing in the world? Junior brother must have already thought it through clearly. If it was that simple, I'm afraid that my Fallen Gold Mountain would have already been filled with foundation establishment cultivators. Why would you need to find other fellow Taoists? Hehe, Xiaohua laughed and didn't continue to pester him. He asked again, I just don't know how much time you'll give me? If this secret method is complicated, this disciple doesn't have the confidence to fully comprehend it. This old man can't say for sure. Perhaps several days, perhaps 10 days. Of course, it could also be 10 days. Junior brother should comprehend it earlier. The earlier you comprehend it, the earlier you can grasp it. Otherwise, if you suddenly start, junior brother will be caught unprepared. Yu Ping replied without hesitation. Then, is this disciple inside this small room? Can I come out? Xiaohua looked at the small room and was somewhat hesitant. Naturally, you can't come out. Yu Ping was somewhat impatient. Junior brother, just treat it as seclusion. When you come out of seclusion, If by chance, I'm afraid that this old man will have to call junior brother senior brother. Hee, I hope so. Xiao Hua was so happy that his eyes were about to close. However, he still didn't want to go in. At this moment, a kind of fear emerged from the back of his head, as if someone was spying on him. Xiao Hua's heart stirred and he released his Buddhist sense. However, his back and all around him were completely empty. There wasn't even any divine sense sweeping over him. Should I go in or not? Xiao Hua felt that this place was not good. However, if he were to turn hostile, the cultivators spying on him might not be any weaker than a golden core cultivator. Although he could cause a ruckus, how would he escape? How would he find out the secrets of the Huanhua sect and Falling Gold Mountain? All of that would be for naught. How can one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? This young master wants to see if this small room can trap this young master. Xiao Hua secretly thought in his heart. If so, many thanks to senior brother. Xiao Hua knew that he couldn't hesitate at this moment. After cupping his hands and thanking him, he stepped into the small room. As Xiao Hua's figure entered the small room, Yu Ping waved his hand and the whole slowly melted, as if a melted liquid was gathering in one place. Yu Ping, who sent this disciple here? An ice-cold voice came from the silver building. It was very loud, but it was impossible to identify its origin. Yu Ping's heart trembled. He immediately bowed respectfully and said to the sky, "This is the Huanhua sect disciple that Yu Dong chose to send here. Her name is Feng Ying." Huanhua sect disciple? This Yu Dong is really daring. If the Huanhua sect were to find out about this, wouldn't it be troublesome? Although the cold voice sounded a little surprised, it didn't sound surprised at all. Yu Dong has always been cautious. Yu Ping smiled apologetically and said, "If he thinks it's okay, then it's okay. Moreover, he hasn't chosen a disciple yet. This time, if he doesn't find a suitable disciple, I'm afraid he will be punished by the sect master. Perhaps he has no other choice. Besides, there were also many Huanhua sect disciples before." The ice-cold voice snorted coldly. Yu Ping was so frightened that he lowered his head and didn't dare to defend himself. "It's true that you were punished because you didn't find a cultivator and couldn't complete the mission. However, if the cultivator sent here is not suitable and leaks the news, or ruins my grand plan, then it won't be a matter of punishment. It will be a consequence of your head being separated from your body." After hearing this, Yu Ping waited for a long while, but didn't say anything else. He tilted his head and looked at the silver building. The sky was also silver. He shrank his neck and hurriedly left. Above the silver sky that Yu Ping was afraid of, a light cloud rose. It had the atmosphere of an immortal. However, these light clouds weren't truly pale white. Instead, they had a kind of heaviness and an indescribable sharpness. They were completely filled with silver. Above the silver clouds, a well-built gold-core old man wearing a silver robe stood there. This old man had silver-white hair and a silver-white beard. Even his face faintly flickered with a silver-white color, making him appear different from others. The strangest thing was that this old man's eyes also emitted a faint silver-white light. He was looking at a tiger-shaped magic tool in his hand. As expected, the mystic artifact was also silvery white in color. On the back of the mystic artifact, there was an oval mirror that was emitting a faint silvery white light. The light reflected the light in the old man's eyes, revealing the situation within the various buildings under the silver clouds. Just like Xiao Hua's small hut, through this tiger-shaped magic tool, the old man was able to see over 10,000 small huts. The vast majority of these huts had a cultivator. These cultivators were all at the early or middle stage of foundation establishment. There were even a few at the late stage. However, these cultivators' Taoist robes were different. They clearly weren't from the same sect. Another similarity was that each cultivator held a small jade slip in their hands. Some were using their divine sense to enter, while others were closing their eyes and pondering. After roughly looking through it, the old man clapped his hand, and a silver-white brilliance appeared on his palm. The tiger-shaped artifact disappeared into the old man's hand, and the silver light in the old man's eyes also dissipated, revealing his pitch-black eyes. However, within those eyes, There were traces of silver light. Wait a few more days. When the people are all gathered, the Midas touch can be activated. The old man seemed very satisfied. A trace of a smile appeared on his face. However, this smile seemed somewhat forced. If the old man wasn't truly happy, then there must be something wrong with the muscles on his face. Chapter 2584. Immediately, the old man turned around and flew for a moment. With a flick of his sleeve, a light flashed, and a huge portal appeared out of thin air. The old man flashed into it, and then the portal disappeared again. Xiaohua saw that the old man was in a space that was several times larger than the square that Xiaohua had just seen. This space was empty, and there were only 2 balls of silver-white light rolling in the air. These 2 balls of light looked exactly the same at first glance, but as the old man flew closer, one of the balls of light had a silver-white brilliance mixed with fiery red threads, and a threatening heat rushed over. The other ball of light had a silver-white brilliance mixed with azure threads, and a bone-piercing chill also rushed over. In the face of such extreme heat and extreme cold, the old man's face showed even more satisfaction. He waved his hand, and a dozen silver lights flew out from his sleeve and hit various places in the space. The silver light in the space flourished, and countless strange runes appeared, flowing on the surface of the entire space for a moment before disappearing. Thus, the old man patted his hand and took out the tiger-shaped magic weapon. Under the urging of his spiritual power, the tiger-shaped magic weapon gradually transformed, and a lifelike silver tiger appeared in midair. Roar! The silver tiger raised its head and roared. The golden spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into the silver tiger's bloody mouth, and a hurricane was born from the space. However, although the hurricane was strong, the old man's robe was like cast iron, and it did not move at all. When the silver tiger soared to more than 2 feet tall, the silver tiger stopped absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Speed! The old man made a gesture with his hand and pointed at the silver ball of light with azure threads. The silver tiger opened its mouth and spat out a misty silver light. The silver light fell on the ball of light, and like hot water poured on a snowball, the ball of light quickly melted, revealing a gap of 1 person's height. Little friend Zhang, are you ready? The old man's voice lowered, which was rare, and his address was even more amiable. Sect Master Yu Qing'an is so impatient. A clear female voice came from the gap, and then a woman's figure appeared in the gap, back to Xiaohua. Under the prying eyes of Sect Master Yu Qingtian, he had no choice but to enter the hut. However, he felt that prying eyes were still there, and this feeling was like a fishbone stuck in his throat, making him very uncomfortable. He had no choice but to pretend to take out the jade slip and carefully read it. However, as he read it, he really went deep into the secret technique and concentrated. After the time it took to eat a meal, he withdrew his divine sense from the jade slip, and immediately, without hesitation, he waved his hand and took out a sword slip. However, as soon as he took it out, he was startled. He raised his head and looked around. Fortunately, the feeling of being spied eyes on, and he was the only one in the hut. This cultivator should be around the middle stage of the gold core, and he is relying on some magic weapon. Xiaohua gave Yu Qingtian a rough estimate. Then, he immersed his divine sense into the sword bamboo slip and looked at the cultivation method for half a meal. Only then did he put away the sword bamboo slip. He frowned slightly and closed his eyes to ponder. His brows gradually relaxed, and the hand seals in Xiaohua's hand also slowly formed, and a silver brilliance gradually emerged from his hand. Finally, it condensed into a silver-white small sword in his hand. Strange. Xiaohua's gaze fell on the small sword, and he muttered in his heart, how could this falling Gold Mountains Yu family have a secret technique for sword cultivation? On the surface, this secret technique looks like a cultivation method for Dao cultivators, and the first half is about how to cater to the different fluctuations of the formation, and how to guide the sword qi in the formation into the meridians in the body. This formation, perhaps, is the formation that turns stone into gold. And the second half is how to condense the sword qi into true essence. But, according to this secret technique, How can the sword qi be turned into true essence? How can it be guided into the meridians? This sword qi can only be formed into sword origin, right? Moreover, the second half of this secret technique is extremely obscure and vague. It can be said without mercy that it hides a lot of key things. If you comprehend it together with this sword cultivation method, you will be able to understand it. You family, what are they doing? Xiaohua was absolutely puzzled. Are they cultivating their own power? Do they want to break away from the washing flower sect and become a cultivation sect? I can only understand it like this. It seems that all the cultivation families want to break away from their identity as a family. If you family can turn stone into gold, maybe they can create a group of cultivators, and becoming a sect won't be difficult. I'm afraid this is what you want this washing flower sect disciple to promise you. Xiaohua secretly laughed, put away the jade slip and sword slip, and stood up. This young master should also go out and take a look. See if this young master's guess is correct. Thinking, Xiaohua pinched his hand, and a yellow brilliance flashed around his body, and he was about to use the earth escape technique. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua's figure moved, and the silver luster under his feet became even brighter, and even some brilliance was produced. This is bad. This floor is indeed not made of earth or stone. Xiaohua secretly cursed. His guess when he entered the room just now was actually true. Immediately, Xiaohua walked to the wall, stretched out his arm, and placed his hand flat on the wall. A kind of ice-cold and brilliant feeling passed through his palm. Xiaohua even used his finger to knock on the wall a few times, and a clear sound rang out again. Xiaohua thought for a moment, and opened his left hand. In the illusion breaker eye, a layer of faint and thin silver brilliance surrounded him. This brilliance was extremely dense, and there were no flaws. This is troublesome. Xiaohua complained incessantly, and slapped his hand, taking out the rabbit spirit talisman. After a slight hesitation, he hit it on the wall. Fortunately, although the silver wall looked extremely dense, and even a needle couldn't pierce it, when the rabbit spirit talisman hit it, it emitted specks of silver brilliance, and the spirit talisman sank in, disappearing without a trace. Haha, seeing this, Xiaohua's heart calmed down, and he secretly laughed as he hit the other spirit talismans on the wall. After a moment, Xiaohua carefully grabbed with his hand, and a small hole appeared in the middle of the rabbit spirit talisman. Xiaohua released his spiritual sense from the hole, and seeing that there were no traces of anyone else, he worriedly stuck his head out. After confirming that he could escape from the room, he retracted his head back, and kept the rabbit spirit talisman. Since I can escape so easily, I will act according to the situation. In the end, this young master doesn't believe that the Yu family won't reveal their true colors. This young master doesn't believe that there will be anyone who can block this young master's escape. Xiaohua said with a cold sneer. Thinking about this, Xiaohua kept the spirit talisman and sat down cross-legged. He took out the secret techniques of the Yu family and the sword arts of sword cultivators, and carefully compared them, slowly comprehending them. Not to mention that Xiaohua had fallen into the small room of the Yu family, he relied on his profound strength and didn't care about the danger of this trap. Instead, he calmed his heart, comprehended the secret techniques of the Yu family, and waited for the Yu family to reveal the truth. Furthermore, the Jindan cultivators in the discussion hall were all dressed up, and they personally led their disciples to attack the arrogant sword cultivators according to their previous arrangements, and to open the curtains to the final battle. Before leaving, the Jindan cultivators in the discussion hall gathered together again, and discussed for a long time. They seemed to have exhausted their minds, and considered all the arrangements, attacks, and even retreating if they failed. They understood in their hearts that this battle was crucial, and they were staking it all on a single throw. If they couldn't seize the opportunity to attack first, and catch the sword cultivators off guard, then the Dao cultivators wouldn't be able to recover from their previous disadvantage, and they would be defeated sooner or later. Thus, the people who usually had some grudges during discussions in the discussion hall didn't dare to be negligent, and they openly spoke their thoughts, as well as the thoughts of others. Sure enough, after brainstorming together, they really did find quite a few details that they had overlooked. As a matter of fact, in the vicinity of Clear Sky Cave, Kunlun Sex Yuan Zhongyu, Imperial Thunder Sex Gon Mo, and Clear Leaf Sex Ji Hong all wore grave expressions as they urged the tens of thousands of disciples of the three sects to fly quietly while discussing something in low voices. Yuan Zhongyu's spiritual sense swept out, and he looked at the gloomy sky with spots of light in the distance and said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, fellow Taoist Ji, I'm afraid that it will be troublesome for us to head to Clear Cave today." That's right, when I heard that the sword cultivators were actually building a city here, I felt that it was funny. The sword cultivators who have always been arrogant actually imitated our Dao cultivators to build a defense, and this is simply stealing it. In the eyes of us experts, this trick is just showing off. Ji Hong also nodded. But before we left, after listening to everyone's careful analysis, I realized that there was indeed something fishy about this. That's right, today's sword cultivators are no longer the simple-minded people in our eyes who don't know when to advance or retreat, and who only rely on the sharpness of their flying swords to flaunt their superiority. Think about Qin Jian's schemes over the past few years, and how many of our fellow Taoists have died under his sword, and think about how many times we have fallen into the sword cultivators' schemes in this great battle. It makes me shudder. Yuan Zhongyu bit his lips and narrowed his eyes as he spoke. Perhaps this Clear Cave is another sword cultivator's trap. Ji Hong didn't hide her guilty conscience. Now that I think about it, it was really reckless of me to ask for a battle. Hee, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Yuan Zhongyu also laughed bitterly in a low voice. But now that we're already here, the arrow on the bow has to be shot. At this point, Yuan Zhongyu looked at Qian Mo, who was only looking forward and didn't say anything. He then exchanged glances with Ji Hong and said that cunning Qin Jian was killed by 3 juniors, and his lifetime of fame has been created by these 3 kids. Fellow Taoist Qian, congratulations, your Imperial Thunder Sex Xiaohua is now very famous. Xiaohua is just the most ordinary disciple in my Imperial Thunder Sect. Qian Mo said indifferently. He even entered my Imperial Thunder Sect as a rogue cultivator. There are many more disciples in my Imperial Thunder Sect who are more outstanding than him. Chapter 2585. Fellow Taoist Qian, in this war, there isn't a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect who has more battle merits than him, right? Yuan Zhongyu said with a smile. That's because Xiaohua's luck is good. At the same time, it's also because my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples are good at teaching. Qian Mo didn't want to talk about Xiaohua. He pointed his finger forward and said, "Now, my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples who are more outstanding than Xiaohua are gathered here. I believe that each of them can achieve battle merits comparable to Xiaohua's." Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong smiled bitterly at the same time. They looked at each other again and their eyes were filled with bitterness. It was as if what they said just now was like a chicken talking to a duck and couldn't be understood. Also, fellow Taoist Yuan and fellow Taoist Ji just now. This Qian can't agree. This Qian didn't care about their expressions and continued, "Sword cultivators are just barbarians. How can they be compared to the great sects of my Dao sect?" Although the sword cultivators had the upper hand in the early stages of the war, they only managed to gain the upper hand. If they fought against my Dao sect on the territory of the country of Shi and the country of Lian, they would definitely be lacking in strength. The advantage they had in the early stages can't be easily maintained. As long as the sects of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation really compete with them, they will definitely flee upon hearing the news. Ahem. Yuan Zhongyu coughed twice. In his heart, he was puzzled as to why Qian Mo had such a good feeling. He reminded him, the sword cultivators were able to destroy Emochin Cave at the beginning of the war and even built a big city here without anyone noticing. I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? So what if they aren't simple? Qian Mo's tone was still indifferent. The Kunlun sect, the Clear Leaf sect, and my Imperial Thunder sect are all great sects of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. They are all sects that reside in the conference hall. If we don't come here, who will? If we don't take this risk, who will? Seeing Qian Mo wearing the label of Great Sect on his head, Yuan Zhongyu smiled and said, "That's right. The Imperial Thunder Sect is a famous great sect in the country of Xi. In my heart, this great sect that values its reputation more than its life is stronger than the likes of Shanghua Sect and Qiqiao Sect. My Kunlun Sect is only in the country of Lian. If we were in the country of Xi, I'm afraid we would be ranked behind the Imperial Thunder Sect." That's right. I don't know too much about the Imperial Thunder Sect, but I've worked with fellow Taoist Qian in the past few years. Fellow Taoist Qian's magnanimity and uprightness have made me sigh with emotion. Presumably, among the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, from Sect Master Qian Lazy to the most common aura-refining disciple, all of them have the same spirit as fellow Taoist Qian. My Bright Leaf Sect truly admires you. The disciples of our two sects will be able to interact with each other even better, allowing my Qingyi sect disciples to benefit greatly. Fellow Taoists, you're belittling yourselves. Qian Mo said with a smile, "My Imperial Thunder Sect has the foundation of a great sect, but I'm not as noble as you say. I only do things that are worthy of my conscience. I don't care about other people's opinions." This battle, what do you think, fellow Taoist Qian? Yuan Zhongyu's eyes flickered, and he said with some hesitation, "We've already made careful arrangements and preparations to attack the Sword Cultivator City, but the disciples of the three sects must attack and defend, and have a master and a subordinate. I think fellow Taoist Qian is full of wisdom. This battle should be presided over by fellow Taoist Qian." Yes, Ji Hong quickly smiled apologetically and said, "I think so too." This Qian Mo's eyes flashed with a hint of eagerness, but he was still hesitant. He said, "Fellow Taoist Yuan should be in charge of the Battle of Clear Sky Cave. This has already been decided in the meeting hall. I'm afraid it's against the rules for me to temporarily take over, right?" Although Qian Mo's words were questioning, it was obvious that he was asking for their opinions. How could Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong not understand? They hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, don't decline. In a great battle, the ones who control the situation are always the sages. Fellow Taoist, you haven't been on duty in the meeting hall and have never shown your talent in planning. Now is the time for fellow Taoists to show your ambition and contribute to our Tao sect." That's right. With our disciples in fellow Taoists' hands, only fellow Taoists' selfless heart can make us feel at ease. Ji Hong added. Good. Qian Mo clapped his hands and said, "Since fellow Taoists think so highly of me, this seat, I'll take it for the time being. However, there's something that I want to make clear. The merits of this battle will be split equally between the three of us. I won't take any more than that." Good. Fellow Taoist Qian's noble character and unquestionable integrity can be seen from this. Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong simultaneously raised their thumbs up and said happily, "Let's go. Let's increase our speed. This clear cave is not far ahead. Now that the sky has just turned bright, it's time to attack the sword cultivators and catch them off guard." Qian Mo waved his hand and the mana in his feet surged as he rushed forward. Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, your flying technique is obviously faster than ours. Aren't you bullying the two of us?" Ha! Qian Mo laughed heartily in front of the two of them. Following Qian Mo's command, the tens of thousands of disciples from the three sects indeed increased their flying speed. In less than an hour, they arrived in front of the clear cave. Although the Tao sect disciples had made countless guesses before arriving, when they saw the huge city in front of them that was tens of feet tall and stretched for several miles, they were still somewhat stunned. At this moment, the sun had already risen and the rare cool sunlight shone on the city walls. The city walls seemed to be completely transparent, as if they were made of ice. The colorful light reflected off the city walls dazzled the eyes of the crowd of cultivators. Sword cultivators. What are they doing? Qian Mo and the rest also groaned. They raised their hands and signaled all the cultivators to stop in midair. An ear-piercing sound of swords rang out from behind the city walls. It was obvious that the sword cultivators had also discovered the whereabouts of the large group of cultivators. Rays of sword light flashed and countless sword cultivators flew to the top of the city walls. Fellow Taoist Yuan, is the sword cultivators planning to build another sky patrol city in this clear cave? Qian Mo asked softly. Yuan Zhongyu's face was also filled with astonishment. His spiritual sense swept across the ice city and he shook his head. The sky patrol city has been around for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. How can this ice city be compared to the sky patrol city? Even so, we can't underestimate it. The city walls of this ice city are protected by the sword cultivator's sword array, which has blocked our spiritual sense. We can't see what secrets he has in the city. Ji Hong was a little worried. She whispered, Clear Cave has an ice city, could it be that there are other similar big cities? If that's the case, we have to pay attention to the intentions of the sword cultivators. Maybe the purpose of their battle here is far from what we expected. Qian Mo narrowed his eyes and said coldly, even if there is such an ice city, we can set up arrays. Attacking cities and seizing territories is the strength of us cultivators. The sword cultivators are actually playing with their weaknesses and avoiding their strengths. Aren't they seeking their own deaths? Fellow Taoists, listen to my orders. My thunder-controlling sect disciples will set up arrays and attack the front. Kunlun sect disciples will attack the left wing and Clear Leaf sect disciples will attack the right wing. We will talk after we have destroyed this ice city. All right, we will listen to fellow Taoist Qian's orders. Yuan Zhongyu glanced at Ji Hong. Both of them let out a long breath. They took out the tokens in their hands and were about to give orders. Qian Mo sneered, as if he didn't see their expressions. He raised his hand and activated his transcendence energy. He shouted, Thunder-controlling sect disciples, listen to my orders. Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a phoenix cry sounded. A ray of emerald green light flew out from the ice city and rushed straight into the sky. A cold-faced woman wearing an emerald green sword robe appeared from the sword light. It was Black Phoenix Sword Sex LV Ruochang. LV Ruochang's eyes were still filled with killing intent. She coldly looked at the tens of thousands of cultivators. Her gaze then fell on Qian Mo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong. Audacious cultivators, you actually dare to invade my Mo Qingqing. LV Ruochang lightly reprimanded, like the cry of a phoenix. The emerald green sword light around her flickered. Ha, what a joke. Qian Mo flew a few feet forward and laughed. This is the territory of my country of Xi. It has always been the territory of my Dao cultivators. When did it become the territory of your sword cultivators? You sword cultivators built a city on my Dao sect's land. You have already violated my Dao sect's taboo. Now that my Dao sect disciples have come to encircle you, you actually dare to bite back? Which sect are you swordsmen from? Why aren't you reporting your name? If you surrender early, I can still spare your lives. Heh, this sword knows that cultivators are all sharp-tongued. This sword only said one sentence, and you actually have so many words to deal with this sword. LV Ruochang said coldly, this sword can't win against you in words. You and the rest, show me your true abilities. After saying this, the sword light around LV Ruochang's body flickered. The emerald green brilliance gradually gathered. Finally, with a wave of LV Ruochang's hand, an emerald green phoenix sword intent flew out. The phoenix's body overflowed with cold light. The ice-cold sword light reflected the sunlight above the ice city. It was extremely beautiful. Following the release of LV Ruochang's sword intent, the flying swords around the ice city let out a weng 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 sword cry. It was as if it was going to resound through the 9 heavens. Moreover, this sword cry seemed to be mixed with an extremely powerful secret technique that could pierce a person's soul. Although some of the lower-level disciples who were slightly closer to the ice city covered their ears with their hands, their figures still fell. Ah! 3rd grade illusory sword. Sword array. Seeing LV Ruochang release the sword intent, that incomparably powerful phoenix, and the surrounding flying swords responding to it, Qian Mo and the rest's faces unconsciously changed. The 3rd grade illusory sword was comparable to the late gold core stage. In terms of attack power, It was close to the early nascent soul stage. Qian Mo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong were all middle gold core stage cultivators. It seemed that it would not be easy for them to deal with LV Ruochang. That's right, this sword is Black Phoenix Sword Sex LV Ruochang. LV Ruochang coldly said, "You gold core stage cultivators in the conference hall are indeed biting off more than you can chew. You actually did not even investigate the background of my sword cultivator. You don't even know who this sword is. You and the rest can win against this array? You are merely a third-grade illusory swordsman. What is there to be proud of?" Qian Mo retorted sarcastically. "We conference hall cultivators are more concerned about many things. How could we investigate all the illusory swordsmen? Moreover, we Dao sect cultivators disdain to arrange spies among our sword cultivators. If we want to fight, we will fight fair and square. Unlike you and the rest, who used all kinds of despicable means to plant spies among our cultivators and investigate all the cultivators in our conference hall. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.